And we are live. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hi.
May the 4th be with you.
May the fourth be with you.
I think you have to do this, right?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
That's clearly the right gesture.
How many notes of the John William theme can we hum before getting demonetized? Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. That's it. We cut there.
You only get
That's all
so
you get.
many. You only get so many seconds.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. We're going to talk about one of my favorite role-playing games. I actually have a shirt for it and everything. We're going to talk about the Star Wars role-playing games, of which I have played almost all. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I've played only a couple myself, but one of them, the FFG, was one of my first games I owned. I had one of the starter sets for it, so some real RPG memories there.
Yes, we should be saying hello there. Hello there.
Hello there.
I don't know if I could get quite the Ewan McGregor there.
Few of us can. Although, if you're not Ewan McGregor, who are you?
Yes, so I am Ross Watson. I am a game designer and author. I have worked on over 100 different role-playing game products, including Star Wars Edge of the Empire, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. I am a Star Wars RPG enthusiast and have been ever since the first one came out in 1987.
Yeah, Adam Vera. I am a RPG enthusiast myself. I am a big Star Wars fan. I grew up watching the films. I've played a couple of the systems. I have sunk a lot of time into Star Wars forum-esque roleplay things and playing KOTOR and things. So I'm very intrigued by Star Wars and am pretty stoked for today. I've also written for a lot of the Warhammer fantasy games for 4th edition especially. So yeah.
There's a fascinating link between a Warhammer role-playing game and a Star Wars role-playing game, which we will talk about today. Can't wait to get into that. But I also, I am so excited to hear about your forum adventure with Star Wars. I want to know more.
Oh boy. That was during my like old school forum RP era, and it lasted less long than I'd have hoped. It was a lot of fun. We were playing smugglers and all sorts of ne'er-do-wells out there trying to do what we can in the shadow of the Empire. And I think that's one of the classic like elements of the Star Wars setting we're going to talk about today. Just that operational space, sticking it to the man, being some sort of rebellious force.
A scoundrel, you might say.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like the iconic archetype, right? Like there's, it's just so cool. I was pretty young during that, but I treasured it. We had someone playing as HK-47, of course, because
I mean, he's awesome. I mean, let's be fair. He's one of the best characters ever. But I would say, looking at the two of us right now, I would say you look like a scoundrel. I look like a scruffy-looking nerf herder.
Do I have that scoundrel aura?
I mean, a little bit. It's the gold, I think.
It is Golden Week. It
is. So I thought I would start, if it's okay, I would start with just kind of breaking down like what the different editions of Star Wars are and have been in the past.
Please, yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So Star Wars as a role-playing game has been published nearly continuously for 33 years, starting in 1987. The edition that I first got into is called the West End Games D6 system, designed by extremely well-known and talented game designer called Greg Kostikian. And I am here to tell you, I've been running this game every weekend here at my house. This system holds up. It's almost 40 years old at this point, and it's a system that still holds up, which is pretty wild and great. So that edition, the first edition was 1987. They followed that up with a second edition of the D6 system in 1992. There was possibly the most well-known version, came out in 96. This would have been the second edition revised and expanded, if you're looking for it. And then we did get a 30th anniversary in 2018 published by Fantasy Flight Games. So that is also a version a lot of people have. And if you are interested in acquiring this, you can find it out there just doing a search for Star Wars Re-Up, REUP. There is a fan community that keeps that system very well alive, and it is a free download PDF if you're curious about that. Then so West End lost the license in 99, and Wizards of the Coast picked it up in 2000. And for the next 10 years, Wizards of the Coast would publish 2 versions of the Star Wars role-playing game. The first version being the Star Wars D20 role-playing game. I did play this one as well. It is possibly the most divisive of all the Star Wars editions, and we will talk about that when we get to it. And then Saga Edition came along in 2007. Now, Saga Edition is, next to the West End games, is possibly the most well-known, I think, possibly. Because it was published for almost 3 or 4 years, and it had a whole bunch of releases. And Saga Edition is very well known. It has won a lot of awards. Very well designed game. Then we get to 2012. Fantasy Flight Games picks up the license. WotC had it until, I think their last publication was 2009. So there's a little bit of a gap. And then 2012 picks up with Fantasy Flight. I was there for this. I was in the room. I can discuss a whole bunch of stuff about the Star Wars role-playing game, starting with Edge of the Empire, because that was one I had a lot to do with at Fantasy Flight Games. And we can discuss it. It's going to be interesting. Also, Edge of the Empire is the one that is connected to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And then we get nothing, because Fantasy Flight Games lost the license in 2020, and there hasn't been any published RPGs for Star Wars in 6 years. So if you are out there and you know someone at Disney and you want to publish a Star Wars role-playing game, it's wide open. Who knows? Go out there and be a part of it.
Yeah, and we talked about like RPG holy grails a while back. I think that Star Wars is definitely one of those superstar IPs that naturally attracts interest and intrigue, right? It lends itself well to this. So it's no wonder there's been something going on for a lot of the history of the franchise, right?
Yeah, you can argue there's been 4 technical editions of the game, and of those, I think 3 were very popular. And I played all but the Saga Edition. I've played every single one of them except for Saga. And I did play D20 Core, so I mostly played Saga, even though I didn't actually play Saga. Did you play Saga System, Vera?
I did not play Saga System. I've played the FFG system, and I played a little bit of the D20. I only in like practice though. Like I played like the OG revised something, like not Saga, but yeah.
Okay, well, we would I think we should probably go ahead and start with the very first one, which is the West End Games one, which is also the most influential one. And I love talking about this. We actually had a whole episode on the influences of role-playing games, and in that episode we talked about the West End Star Wars role-playing game and how that has essentially been a core keystone building block of almost everything we know about Star Wars outside of the movies. It's crazy fun. So basically, what you need to know about the West End Games version regarding that, and I promise I'll get into the nuts and bolts of the edition very, very soon. But the West End Games D6 Star Wars practically invented the Star Wars expanded universe. The source books were so thorough that Lucasfilm considered them semi-authoritative canon and sent the books to Timothy Zahn, who was writing the Thrawn trilogy, which was like the first time Star Wars had done anything in quite a while post Return of the Jedi. We had like a couple of Ewok adventure films, and that was about it for Star Wars. So when the Thrawn trilogy published, it was a big deal. It was the first like official Star Wars thing we'd had in a long time. And he built that on top of the role-playing game, and then the expanded universe built off of all of that. yeah, there wasn't really any post Return of the Jedi fiction until the Thrawn trilogy came along, which is pretty cool. And in fact, the name Coruscant, which is the headquarters, it's the capital world of the Galactic Empire, that came from the role-playing game. And Lucas was like, you know what? That sounds pretty good. I'm going to keep that.
West End made a lot of licensed RPGs, right?
Well, they made Ghostbusters, and they made Star Wars, and they made, I think, one or two more licensed games, but they also did Blood Shadows, and they also did there's a few that I want to say they weren't just licensed, but I think the majority of what they're known for is licensed games. I think that's fair. Hey, we have a super chat. Boom, Patrick Lorebeards. Why don't you read this one?
Which is hotter, Varys' avatar or Ross's beard? It's clearly the beard. Come on.
Oh, I love it when people compliment my beard. I work hard on
Lorebeards. Come on, obviously.
But I think if it were me, I would say Vera is absolutely the winner of Hot or Not on this show. So there's that. But thank you, Patrick Mulligan. And it's, of course, incumbent upon me to say that Super Chats are the absolute best way to support the channel, support us as the hosts, and keep bringing great new Lorebeards role-playing content to your screen. So we're always very grateful to everyone who supports us.
Thank you so much.
So. A couple of fun things about the West End Games version. It's only the second RPG ever to use a dice pool system. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's a trendsetter.
Basically. And guess which was the first game ever to use a dice pool system?
The first game to use a dice pool system?
Yeah, Ghostbusters RPG, 1986. So yeah, the dice mechanics are extremely, at the time, were very avant-garde, because it was like, whoa, dice pool, what is this? Oh my gosh. Pretty rad. And
as I understand, Ghostbusters and Star Wars were cross-compatible, basically, right? They used almost the same system, so you could have an adventure where you bring in Slimer to help fight the Sith, right?
Well, Greg Kostikian designed both, and I mean, there's obvious differences between them, but there's definitely some core elements that do crossover and maintain. Although I got to be honest, that's something that never occurred to us back in the 80s and 90s. I don't think we ever attempted a Ghostbusters crossover with Star Wars. Now I feel like we missed something. Now I'm like, well, hell, why didn't we try that?
Well, a lot of the FFG games wound up being cross-compatible, but not Star Wars. Not Star Wars. Maybe with third, actually. We'll get there.
Ricky Chapman coming in with a steel chair of the super chat. Thank you so much, sir. He says, we've played Star Wars tabletop role-playing games for years, with our favorite being a campaign we DM'd for. It was epic. So I think he's saying he DM'd it. It was epic. A stolen Luger Hulk, not sure what that is, acting as a mobile black market with both players playing Mandalorian brothers, both former Death Watch. Wow, that sounds pretty rad.
Yeah, a Luger Hulk was one of the Trade Federation ships. If you're going with like the ray ship with the globe in the middle, it's one of those. And they're super cool. They have a great profile. They were used with the Confederacy. So,
you know, if the Trade Federation could see us now, you know what they'd say? Now there are two of them.
That is a cool place to run a black market out of, though. I'd assume they were like almost made for it, right?
I mean, well, I would assume they'd have a lot of like infrastructure aboard one of those vessels for, you know, keeping an eye on the markets and for being able to transmit your buys and your sells and your trades. I would assume it would have some advantages, yeah, for black market. I don't know.
When you get the droid control units on board, stuff like that, because they're all made to be compatible with yeah.
Yes, the good old droids. Good old droids. Oh my god. So many of my characters have been droids, I should point out, in the past.
Respectable.
So yeah, this game, West End D6, ran for 12 years. It started in 1987, went through 1999. its influence is super strong. Like there's an episode of Rebels that is basically an adventure called Strike Force Shatapole, which is about the B-wing fighter. And if you've seen Rebels, you probably know the episode. But yeah, Dave Filoni is a big fan of it and has referenced it many times. And we get the ISB from Andor, the television series Andor, that comes directly out of the role-playing game as well. And so this product is super influential. But we have to talk about West End Games if we're going to talk about D6 Star Wars. And West End Games is a pretty interesting game company. What do you know much about them?
I know a little bit. Yeah, I know that they're responsible for Paranoia.
Mm-hmm, that's right. That was one of their other big hits, and that was one of their non-licensed games.
I know they made some sort of Indiana Jones game that I've never played.
That's news to me. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and they also made a Hercules and Xena role-playing game.
Yeah, so West End Games was tied into the owner tied it into his family business, which was a shoe distributor business. Yeah. I know. Yeah, I can see your avatar going, wait, what? Huh? Shoe business? What?
If the shoe fits, I guess.
I mean, it was one of those cautionary tales about connecting businesses in the past, but they acquired the license they acquired the license for Star Wars right at the point where the franchise was kind of starting to decline. Return of the Jedi had come out in 1983, so 4 years prior. And again, there hadn't really been anything since then, with the exception of the Ewok Adventure made-for-TV movies. And I'll be honest, I was there. I watched them as a kid. I was the target frickin' audience. And I can tell you, those did not scratch my Star Wars itch. I was like, bro, what is this? What even is this? It is not very Star Wars, I can tell you that. So there was a bit of a franchise decline. And Lucasfilm had said no novels, so there was no novels happening. And it was just, Star Wars was just kind of starting to fade at the time. And this is the very reason why West End Games, which was a fairly small publisher, was able to get the license at a reasonable cost. It was a bet that paid off enormously for them. Star Wars role-playing game won the Origins Award for Best RPG of 1987, and the game went on to be its flagship property for a decade. And I can tell you this again, having been there, everyone was playing it. Like D&D was still the thing. Like if you went to go play a role-playing game, 9 times out of 10, it was D&D. But if you asked anybody, hey, does anybody want to play Star Wars? They were all like, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And it was the D6 version that we were playing. So it was also one of the early adopters of the internet. In 1991, you could get onto Genie or America Online, if you remember those two things. Wow, we are setting the Wayback Machine here. Somebody go get Mr. Peabody.
Wow, AOL.
I know, right? But they would answer rules questions, and they would get fan feedback and stuff using the early internet, which I thought was pretty cool. Unfortunately, West End Games had to declare bankruptcy in 1998. And the causes were corporate rather than creative, because the company's founder tied it into his family shoe business, and that dragged down the publisher with it because the shoe distribution side was not doing very well. And this bankruptcy, if you heard the timeline, right, 1998, that's 1 year before the Phantom Menace is released. So, damn it. I mean, I have to imagine if you were the West End Games guy and you were like, well, the shoe business is taking me down. I guess I have to stop publishing role-playing games. And there goes Star Wars. And then like 12 months later, son of a... There's a related story. If you're ever curious, go on Netflix and look at The Toys That Made Us and the episode on the Star Wars toys, because there was also a major shift in the Star Wars toys leading up to 1999, and it essentially cost Hasbro a whole bunch of money. So fun fact if you're into those kinds of weird history things like I am and you want to know more. Anyway, so this loss of the license basically put Star Wars into sort of a limbo in tabletop role-playing games. There wasn't really anything happening. But Hasbro, who again, they lost a whole bunch of money because they screwed up the deal for making more toys. We're like, hey, here's a way we can make money on Star Wars. Let's get the license to publish the role-playing game. So they did. Now, getting back to the D6 system, like, how does it work? Vera, have you played it?
I have not. This is the one I've never touched.
I am so sorry. I am honestly so sorry. If there's one thing you could take away from this episode, I hope that you take away that the D6 Star Wars system is excellent. It's really good, yo. I'm a big fan. And
is it similar to like World of Darkness?
Well, World of Darkness uses D10s, so there's similarity in that they're both dice pools, but I find the D6 version more elegant and a better fit for a Star Wars style game. There's the core resolution mechanic is like this. You pick a relevant skill or attribute, you roll that many D6s, you add it up. Sometimes there's a little bit of a bonus, like if you have a +1 or a +2. Then you compare the total to the difficulty number that the GM set. That's it. And the difficulty numbers generally range from 5, which is very trivial and easy, up to 30, which is a nearly impossible task. But if you look at those numbers, a person with a 6 dice in that skill, right, you can hit a 30. It just requires crazy luck.
Okay, so rather than counting successes and fails, you are just totaling the dice.
You're totaling it up. One thing I love about it is the way that you can... So the way that damage works, for example, is I roll to hit you. If I hit you, I roll damage. Then you roll your strength to try and soak the damage, okay? And if I get between 1 and 5 over your roll, you're just stunned. You're at a -1 die for the next turn. That's it. If it's between 6 and 10, you're injured, so it's a -1 die until you get medical attention. If it's between 10 and 15, you're knocked unconscious. You're literally incapacitated by the attack, but you're not dead or dying unless the game master's like, this is a reasonable thing. The Rancor has slashed you with its claws and you're bleeding out. Okay, now there's a ticking clock, but there's not automatically one. And then if it's 16 or more over, that means you're dead. So it's easy for a game master to be like, okay, so you beat the roll by, or you failed to beat the roll by 5. Okay, well, it's no big deal. You're -1 for until the next turn. So it's a cosmetic wound, right? So yeah, it's very easy to run combat with it, and it applies very well to ship combat. You know, if you want to do fighters, I have role played as a fighter pilot doing X-wing things. It's super fun. I would say it breaks down a little bit like when you get to like the capital ship scale, but like for speeders and fighters, and speeder bikes, which is the majority of your cool Star Wars stuff that isn't just a guy, right? It works just fine.
Yeah, that feels important for the setting, being able to touch on that starfighter element. Like that's part of the fantasy, right?
I mean, it's meant to be very cinematic. Now, there is a cool bit called the wild die. This was introduced in the second edition of the game, but I consider it to be part of the core. So the wild die, whenever you roll a dice for any action, one of your dice, typically a different color, is designated as the wild die. And on a result of a 6, the 6 counts and the wild die is rolled again. So it explodes. It's a one that goes up and adds to your total. So your total can actually get much higher if you keep rolling 6s. However, on a result of a 1 on the wild die, it means a complication has occurred. Something bad has happened. And this is Star Wars, so it's almost always something really entertainingly bad. You know, reinforcements show up, Han Solo running back down the hallway, getting chased by all the stormtroopers in the Death Star. You know, boring conversation anyway, right? Like that's a 1 on a wild die example. So it means that any action is theoretically achievable, if improbable, and failure always has some sort of narrative texture rather than just like a hard stop to it. I even stole this mechanic wholesale for Wrath of Glory. That is the Wrath die. That is almost exactly the Wrath die, and Wrath of Glory is copied from this particular mechanic.
There you have it.
Good creators create, great creators steal.
You know, this exploding D6 reminds me of another excellent D6 system, Empires of Satanas.
Okay, so to anybody who doesn't know what the hell that is, we have an episode on Cursed RPGs. Go check that out where we talk about that. We are doing an upcoming one-shot of Empire of Satanas.
Yeah, I think it's going to be our season finale, right?
Ooh.
Something like that. Yeah.
Well, we were talking about TPKs as an alternative, but I'm
for the regular episode. Yeah, we're gonna have like a bonus thing for that.
Sure, but if it's not TPKs, then absolutely Empire Satana. So that's gonna be wild. One of our supporters paid us enough money to do this, and I am dreading it. But at the same time, I know Vera's gonna run. She's gonna be a great DM, and
it'll be fun.
So in Star Wars D6, you have character points and force points. Character points are your advancement currency. It's also, and this is unfortunate, like I consider this a cardinal sin of game design. It is also something you can spend to add to a roll. I hate that. Just let XP be XP, in my opinion. Then force points. Force points are rarer. They're more dramatic. Spending force point doubles your entire dice pool for a phase. It's a massive swing in probability that's reserved for truly cinematic moments. They're supposed to be spent at dramatically appropriate moments in the game. If you spend them heroically, cool, you can also get that point back. But if you spend it for something more selfish, it can be a dark side point. And then anyway, there's a lot going on with that. Anyway, the force points are the here's something special. It's like a resource you can spend to do something really cool and special in the moment. And at my table, it was kind of a requirement that you had to hum the theme song.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
somebody knows we get.
Okay, yeah, just hum the theme song. Nowadays, you have soundboards and things like that we use at our table for it. And then you would spend the point, and then you do something really, really cool. You could do multiple actions just by spending dice. So if you have, let's say you have a 6D in Blaster, 6 dice in Blaster, which means you're a hell of a shot, right? And you're like, I want to shoot 4 Stormtroopers. Okay, cool. You're gonna take 4 dice away from your pool and roll 2 dice against each of those 4 Stormtroopers. It's pretty simple to do additional actions. It just means that you're splitting your focus, and therefore you're less good at all the things you want to do. But it did allow for some really interesting things, like if you are in Starship combat, you're like, okay, I want to scan for a hidden ship and open fire on this TIE fighter. Okay, cool. That's -1 to both things. Go ahead and do that. It's just one of those ways to help move things along. And one of the bits I really enjoyed out of this was the Game Master advice. In the D6 system, the Game Master advice is to do things as cinematically as possible. And they taught me terms like camera wipe, for example, as a way to transition between scenes, because that's how Star Wars does it. You'll be cruising along in your land speeder, and all of a sudden this wipe will come across the screen, and you're in a new scene. And we don't have to describe how they got there. We just know that they were driving, and now they're there. And Star Wars, the RPGs, like, just do that. Just bring in as much cinematics as you can. Talk about where the camera is. Talk about who focuses on the action. And it felt like you were not just playing a game, but you were playing a game that was also a really cool movie.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the tone of the game rooted in like the cinematography of the core franchise. I appreciate that, though. I really do. I think that Star Wars' identity is more than just like the kinds of stuff in the setting. It's the way that it feels. It's the music. It's the iconic wipes.
So yeah, actually, they worked really hard in Star Wars, in the D6 Star Wars, to make it feel like Star Wars. And one of the ways they did this, if you play a droid or a Wookiee, okay, then pick someone else at the table, and that person, the person that you select, they also speak Wookiee or droid, but everyone else doesn't. So if you show up as a Wookiee and your buddy is there, and he can speak Wookiee. He understands everything you say, but everyone else is like, what? Same for droids, which I was like, oh, that's so good. It's so good. Because, not understanding what everyone is saying all the time is actually part of like the Star Wars experience. There are no universal translators in Star Wars. That's Star Trek. That's the other one.
Even a really good protocol droid will get you like part of the way there, but
well, that's the function of a protocol droid. That's literally why you have him there, so he could be the universal translator. Human cyborg relations. Oh no, how horrid. The arm motions are necessary. They are literally part of the performance.
The experienced droid player is saying this, so
I can tell you. Oh my god, so much fun in this game. It's just wild. Also, Jedi were meant to be deliberately rare. Star Wars, the D6 version, is very much built around the original trilogy, where Jedi were that there was really only one. Right? There was Obi-Wan, and then there was Luke. And that was it. That was all the Jedi. I guess, arguably Leia as well, by the time you get to the third film. Mm-hmm. So, but in the original trilogy, so that's why the characters in D6 Star Wars are built around not being Jedi for the most part, although they do have rules for Force and Force abilities. In fact, if you have ever heard the Force broken down into control, sense, and alter as the different like techniques or disciplines of the Force, that comes from D6 Star Wars. They were the first ones to break it down like that. Jira's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry.
This is the one system I haven't read.
I'm so sorry. It's okay.
No, I'm just trying to look at how I've seen it broken down elsewhere, because like you get into consulars, guardians, and so on later on that just shared between KOTOR and D20.
And so Star Wars was not just the core line. It did have several source books in it. But it also had, and some of these source books were built off of the novels that were released prior to the third film, like the Han Solo trilogy by Brian Daley had a source book called Han Solo in the Corporate Sector, which is an excellent source book if you like those books, which I did. So definitely go check that out.
But it sounds like it's about him like in a cubicle hanging out doing 9 to 5.
No, Corporate Sector is actually pretty wild. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. There's like space pirates and this really awesome prison where they had to do a breakout. And there's these, trust me, it's really cool. It's very, very cool. Corporate Sector is neat. Then we get the Star Wars Adventure Journal. Now, between 94 and 97, they published this magazine, quote unquote. It's like it's quarterly, and it's magazine format, but it's like really just like a little digest-sized book. These adventure journals were, and these had new fiction from Star Wars authors like Timothy Zahn. It had adventure modules and GM source material, had an in-universe, galaxy-wide Newsnet updates that were fictional news reports that sometimes included stuff that people would send in from their own campaigns. It had character and location profiles, and it had interviews with Star Wars authors and creatives. In the one of the notable things about the Adventure Journal is it is also the first place where we saw Corran Horn, who is a character in many Star Wars novels published later. Michael Stackpole's X-Wing series features Corran Horn, as well as some of the later books. And there was also Talon Card, which is a character from Timothy Zahn's books, got his start in the Adventure Journals. So, fun times. Hey, we've got a super chat. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah. Hey, Necroplayer. Necro says, howdy, y'all. So how much of the stream is planned to be about KOTOR and KOTOR 2? I'm guessing at least 50%. I am a KOTOR enjoyer. I will say that. I don't know about 50%. We get into the D20 stuff. I think they're relevant.
Big KOTOR fan here. Big KOTOR 2 fan here. Loved both of those games. In fact, I would argue KOTOR 2 has the best Sith Lords in all of Star Wars.
I think I agree.
Period. Darth Nihilus can get it. That dude is amazing.
I think Nihilus and Revan are two of the coolest designs for any Star Wars character.
I like Darth Sion as well too. Darth Sion's really cool, and of course Darth Treya.
Ah, yeah.
Good old Darth Treya.
Treya is the best written character in Star Wars? Question mark.
Okay, so tangent time. Okay, everybody needs a tangent, but the guys that made KOTOR 2 specifically is the same studio that made Planescape Torment. And Planescape Torment was amazing. One of the best role-playing games on computer ever made. And one of the greatest characters in Planescape Torment is Ravel Puzzlewell, a night hag. Okay. And she was written by Chris Avallone along with other people. Some very well-known guys from that era of computer gaming. And Ravel Puzzlewell is absolutely the basis for Darth Treya. They literally were just like, hey, what if we put Ravel into this game and made her a Dark Lord, a Sith Lord?
What if we thought about this setting really critically?
Sorry, apologies. We're getting off on tangents. All right, so
we'll move back.
The defining legacy of the West End Games D6 version is, of course, building the expanded universe from scratch and the connection to Timothy Zahn. Here's just a few things. I literally, this is the tip of the iceberg. A few things you probably know that came from the D6 version. The Gorman Massacre, which was detailed in Andor, was documented in West End Games. That's where we got that first. Imperial Inquisitors, also West End Games. The ISB, which I mentioned before. The Control Sense Alter thing, which I mentioned before. Gizmodo once declared that the West End Games Star Wars RPG was the right combination of coming along at the perfect time and its creatives being given the exact level of free reign to create a perfect sandbox of Star Wars creation. Its influence is still being keenly felt in modern productions because, again, Dave Filoni is a big fan of it. Before we get too far down this rabbit hole, I'll just say what it does well. D6 Star Wars, speed and accessibility. It's very quick, very good. It's easy to get people into it. It's easy to teach. It feels very cinematic. It's the exploding wild eye, the force points, the way that your skills, you can feel very competent at 6 dice in anything. You feel like you're amazingly competent at 6 dice. GM guidance is exceptional, and the source book depth is unmatched for its era. The Imperial source book, for example, so good. I mean, just as a Star Wars fan, you're gonna be like, wow. No other licensed RPG has produced a comparable body of lore expanding content for a single property. This is peak. In some ways, it is peak Star Wars for the late 80s, early 90s. And if you're set in the Rebellion area, you almost have limitless material to run off of, because this is the game. This is the game of the Rebellion era, is the D6 Star Wars. Weaknesses, though. One of the biggest weaknesses of D6 Star Wars is the all Jedi or no Jedi problem. You've probably heard of this. Vera, have you heard of this as an issue?
I have heard of this as an issue, and I think it is kind of intuitive. In that when you have a Jedi, the problems they're able to deal with are Jedi-shaped. The lightsaber is kind of a hot knife through butter for most enemies, and in general, their concerns are kind of lofty and serious, and your smugglers who are just scraping by are a little less inclined towards, perhaps, and less well-suited for the sorts of encounters a Jedi might want to get into. So either you're splitting the party a lot, or you're coming up with ways to somehow structure 50 droids attacking just the one guy.
There's an extremely entertaining YouTube video of an old creator called The Spoony One talking about this particular issue. The all Jedi or no Jedi problem. And it certainly was at that time. One of the biggest problems was you could have a fantastic Star Wars game with 0 Jedi, and you could have a fantastic Star Wars game with everyone as a Jedi. But if you tried to do a mix, things broke down and things got a little weird and things got less fun because typically the Jedi character was just way better than you at almost everything. So that's where this comes from. This is one of the weaknesses of the West End Games version. Character advancement feels very, very slow, especially if you spend your XP to increase your die pools. Don't do that. The multiple action penalties can be very confusing, and a lot of GMs didn't really know how to handle it very well. And at the high level of play, things started to break down. Remember how I said you feel very competent at 6D, 6 dice worth of anything. You feel very good. I played a character that got all the way up to 12D. I was a martial artist, okay? And my Kung Fu knew no equals in Star Wars. I got up to 12D. And yeah, you can trivialize a lot of things when you get to that many dice. It's just, again, remember 30 is like a nearly impossible number. And even at 10d6, 30 is a very achievable number to get without using force points. So it does break down a little bit at the high level. The dark side adjudication also was very vague. It was very much left up to the game master's interpretation of what is or isn't a dark side point or a dark side thing. And so a lot of games in the 80s and 90s have problems with alignments, which Veer and I have talked about before being a terrible thing. And the version of alignment for the West End games is this dark side? I don't know. It's up to the game master. Yeah, veteran players of Star Wars basically say West End Games has the most cinematic feel and it has the fastest resolution. Particularly great for Rebellion era. The most mechanically sophisticated version is, of course, the Fantasy Flight version, the Edge of the Empire stuff we will get into later in the show. The other problem, of course, is that it's not currently in print. But of course, if you want to find it, again, I told you how to do that earlier in the episode. Just do a search for it, and you will see this amazing game in all of its glory. West End Games Star Wars occupies a unique position at the intersection of game design history and pop culture history. As a game, it demonstrated that a licensed RPG could be an authoritative world-building document rather than just a tie-in product. It was the Lego movie of its day. Probably a good way to put it. It was the Lego movie of its day. As a cultural artifact, it's the primary reason why Star Wars has the depth that it does. The species names, the organizations, the planets, the ships, historical events, all these things that fill the galaxy of Star Wars were largely invented by West End Games writers, particularly Bill Slavichek, whose name will come back later in this episode, who was one of the main designers on this game and has given seminars on the influence that this game line has.
Yeah, and what they didn't invent was written by Zahn, who then had a feedback loop with them.
That's right. So the vision of Star Wars that we see today is largely based on a small company in Pennsylvania connected to a shoe distributor. They spent 11 years quietly building out one of the most detailed fictional universes in pop culture ever made. Oh, new super chat. Chris M. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much. Can confirm mixing Jedi and non-Jedi was a thing that was hard to balance in the West End game system. No idea how my GM did it originally. It was a cool system in my intro to TTRPGs, though. Yeah, very cool stuff. Props to the GM if they made it work. Doable, very doable. Just a challenge.
Okay, I have waxed poetic about my favorite version of Star Wars. I would like to give you, Vera, that opportunity to wax poetic about your favorite version of Star Wars, the role-playing game. Please proceed.
So, I have explained before that as a kid, I spent a lot of time tucked into 3rd edition source books. I owned a lot of them. I did not do any playing because I had no one to play with, but I read a lot of these, and I was a voracious reader. I was enthusiastic for like imagining the settings and learning what I could about the books and like thinking about what I'd do if I were running a game. And eventually I got to, and I got into RPG design later in life. But among those third edition source books, I had a Star Wars D20 book that, believe it or not, is quite similar in a lot of ways. As a matter of fact, if you read the core game rulebook for Star Wars the role-playing game, you will find tables that are quite similar to the third edition tables, except instead of white and yellow, they are white and light blue. And when I tell you that D20 is very similar to D&D, you should believe me, because they were both made by Wizards of the Coast, and they both use a D20 base and are very similar. In fact, like, there are a lot of really direct overlaps mechanically. For example, Wookiees have a mechanic called Wookiee Rage that works exactly how you think it would if you have ever read about a barbarian or played one of the tables. So the comparison here is about 1-to-1, and a lot of the same wonderful things about third edition are present in D20. A lot of the pitfalls and challenges are present. There are tons of abilities, tons of skills, tons of feats. Humans, of course, get an extra feat, because why not? It's again, much like in D&D, right? It's an attempt to build out a competent grasp of the Star Wars setting in D&D, which predicted how people would use D&D forever on to play in whatever realm they chose. But again, you have cinematic language, like they talked about, like, oh, your characters are the main characters of the movie, you're making a movie. But in practice, because it has all the crunch of third edition, it is a little less fluid to resolve outcomes, right?
If I may, just briefly, this is where we get Bill Slavichek back again, is in the D20 version, along with Andy Collins and J.D. Weicker, who are both they are additional architects of third edition D&D. So you have a very, very strong design link. The same guys that were working on third edition were working on Star Wars as well.
So I was a big Star Wars nerd as a kid. And although I couldn't play like tabletop games, I got my stepsister and my stepbrother to play like backyard pretend games with me with lightsabers and stuff. So we were out there using the Star Wars books, like the rule books, and the KOTOR strategy guides from Brady Games to guide our various pursuits and inform us on how to correctly play. So I I had that kind of exposure here. It's sort of what you'd think, though. Like, if you've read D&D third edition, you have base attack bonuses, you have extra attacks, you have 20 levels of play, you have bi-level attributes. It is crunchy, it is complicated, it is pretty well compatible with third edition.
There were 8 base classes, 9 in the revised edition that they published in 2002. But of those 8 base classes, this is where we get the split between the different types of Jedi. This is where we get Jedi Guardian, Jedi Consular, and Force Adept,
who would be mirrored in the KOTOR games as the branches you could pursue, because KOTOR also ran on D20.
Yes, 150% this. If you like KOTOR and KOTOR 2, you have played the D20 version.
Yeah, come to think of it, I think that other than like the Noble and maybe there was like some Outer Rim class that was specific to like the Space Boonies. I think the Soldier is 1-to-1 for KOTOR. I think that Scout was there. There was some direct carryover there. So
the one you're thinking of being from the Outer Rim is the Fringer.
Ah, yes. The so-called fringes. Yeah, though, KOTOR is the D20 version. KOTOR is very much a D20 game. And believe it or not, so is Star Wars D20.
Couple things I really liked about it is that it had, it was the first time I ever saw mechanics related to reputation. You could have a feat that would give you a really good reputation. You could also have a feat that would give you a really bad reputation. That I like those. Go ahead.
I guess the heroic characteristics, so to speak. Being a hero.
Hero or scoundrel or both.
Scoundrels are heroes, darn it. It's Star Wars.
All you needed to learn how to use the Force was a feat called Force Sensitive. So literally anybody could start to learn Force if they took the proper feat.
Which would again be reflected in KOTOR, where a lot of your party members sure can learn to use the Force.
There were dark side points that were accumulated for evil acts or passion-fueled Force use, and the mechanic deliberately tempted players to spend a Force point, a dark side point, to give you a larger combat bonus than light side points, which mechanically represents the seductive pull of the dark side.
As it should. I think that is remarkably well done. Like, it should be seductive, darn it. If it's just an alternative, no one will pick it.
Yeah, Kinbo 09 or Kinbo 9 game. I still don't know how to pronounce this. I'm so sorry. It says KOTOR is the D20 version. Yes, the KOTOR games were based on the D20 version of Star Wars. And again, there's a slightly different version we will be getting to just very shortly called Saga Edition, but they are distinctly different, to be clear. Now, one of the things that was also great, super great, possibly the best mechanic in the whole game, vitality points and wound points. Remember this, Vera?
Oh gosh, vaguely.
So in D&D, you have hit points, okay? And this is in all D&D. Like, you go play Baldur's Gate 3 right now, you've got hit points. Hit points represents how hard it is to kill you. And suffering hit point damage is literally health. Like, I am taking wounds, taking damage. I will die if I reach 0 hit points. Star Wars D20 was like, you know what? Let's change that paradigm. Instead, we're going to have things called wound points. Now, these are equal to your constitution, and they never scale. Okay? You never increase. Well, at least as far as I'm aware, there's probably a few minor rules that allow you to do it. But the intention is that it's something you don't really increase. It's always going to be there. But your vitality points, these scale with your level, and they represent... taking damage to vitality points represents something like a near miss or a deflection or strain. It was not meant to represent you actually getting hit and suffering actual damage. It's more like, oh, that barely missed me. It must have taken off a few vitality points. Whereas, if Luke getting his hand chopped off, that was actual wound points. All right. But Luke getting shot at by 20 stormtroopers and they all miss, well, that could have represented him getting, losing a ton of vitality points and just never actually suffering quote unquote real damage. Mm-hmm. Does this now sound familiar?
Yes. And this has been reflected in a lot of discussions about how HP actually works in forum communities forevermore. The idea that you're not really getting hurt until you get into crit wounds or anything. Yeah, abstraction of damage. Exactly. Like this idea has come up organically in a lot of games because it's sort of strange sometimes that you would be that badly injured by something but continue on as if nothing happened. So it is cinematic as well, getting a graze across the cheek, for example, pushing your luck until it runs out.
In Star Wars D20, you could multi-class fairly freely. The only thing you couldn't multi-class between was the 3 Jedi classes. They were not able to multi-class with each other. If you had the Force-sensitive points, Force-sensitive feat, we talked about that. You could use the Force. There were prestige classes, just like 3rd edition. Do you remember the prestige classes?
Oh boy, they'd be similar to the KOTOR ones, aren't they?
Crime Lord is one of them. Elite Trooper, Dark Side Marauder, Jedi Master. These were...
A Jedi Master has to be on there.
Yeah. It was set during the Galactic Civil War, which is the original Rebellion trilogy, the original trilogy of films. Also, you could play Rise of the Empire, which is the prequel era, because this game was released after Phantom Menace, and so the prequels were a thing.
Yeah, and the book had this interesting mix of like images from the prequels and the original trilogy. So you had like Ki-Adi-Mundi in there, posted up with Chewbacca and Han Solo, like stills from the promo with Han Solo from like, oh man, episode 4 even. It was cool. It was cool.
You could also play in the New Jedi Order, which was the post Return of the Jedi expanded universe, which included the Yuuzhan Vong. Oh God, the Yuuzhan Vong.
Who Ross does not like, and I really do.
Major downvote the Yuuzhan Vong. I hate those guys.
Nah, they're cool. It's like biomorphs.
Oh. You know what? I have a feeling that you're eventually going to talk me into like liking things that I shouldn't like Empire of Satanus and now the Yuuzhan Vong. I have a feeling you're going to corrupt me. It's going to happen.
I'm going to be real. I think that Empire of Satanus is an easier pitch than the Yuuzhan Vong.
Well, probably. The revised edition is generally preferred by people. It's a first of all much bigger book. It had more classes. It had a slight difference in the way that armor works. Like armor originally added to your defense, making it harder for you to be hit, just like D&D. But the revised edition said, no. Armor actually reduces damage. It makes you harder to hurt. And also the revised edition includes droids as playable races.
Which kind of matters. Like, droids are a really important part of Star Wars' flavor, I would say.
Sorry, I got a quick... Godzilla Rex says, don't do it, Ross. Stay strong against the Vong. Hawk says, Rogue Squadron is my favorite Star Wars series. Rogue Squadron is great. Also, Wraith Squadron, I would say, Hawk, if you're not familiar with that, you should check that out. It's super good. All right, so what are the things that work and don't work so well with the D20 version?
Ooh, well, this recalls our discussion of 3rd edition in general, because like the way this was built, like literally in the start of the rule book, I think it said like, oh, if you've played the Star Wars role-playing game, this has more options. You could do more. Wow, there's more going on. And there sure was, in a way that made it far harder to resolve turns and made things a little crunchier, right? Like it's got all the pitfalls of a crunchy 3rd edition styled system where your character building is complicated and your resolution can be quite complicated, and you're playing a system that has a lot of room for expression, but also a lot of math. No longer are we rolling a die pool and totaling it. Now we're doing modified D20 results.
I think the vitality point, wound point thing was brilliant. Like, that's my favorite bit out of the whole deal. And it was later, of course, in Star Wars Saga Edition, and even made its way into Unearthed Arcana for 3rd edition as an option. So people did like that a lot. If you were a D&D player and you wanted to play Star Wars, this was your product. There was no more accessible way to do that. And it was the first time that it covered the prequel series.
Yeah. No, you had Darth Maul as an example of a very high dexterity character, I think. I remember one thing I loved in the 3rd edition books and here was that they showed you like the power scaling of different characteristics, like example creatures that would have that specific statistic, right? Like, so in 3.5, there were like, gold dragons have 20 wisdom. Wow, amazing. Here it was like Darth Maul has 20 dexterity. Darth Vader has 18 intelligence. Like, yeah, he does. Cool. I wanted to know that. Thank you.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Some of the classes weren't great. The Fringer was considered to be particularly bad as class design. And the Jedi were still... So the 3rd edition had the linear fighter quadratic wizard problem, right? Remember us talking about that briefly. This game has a similar issue with Jedi, where Jedi are quadratic and everyone else is linear. So at high level play, Jedi, again, are just they're the best thing. They can do all the things. They have all the answers to every possible problem, essentially. The biggest issue, though, is that it felt like D&D in space.
Yeah, and there's one issue that happens when you play D&D in space, which is space combat, which is ludicrously complicated with the D20 system rooted in the D&D structure. Like, we're talking like insane penalties and bonuses to anything, combat starting at sensor range, which is already a nightmare because frankly naval combat in 3rd edition is also a mess, and now that you have 3 degrees of freedom, suddenly oh god.
So yeah, the thing is, Star Wars had been up to that point more or less, diplomats and smugglers doing cool big cinematic things, and the game master had been very encouraged to be spontaneous and sort of guide the action as they will. Okay, when D20 rolled around, it included all of the mechanics for all of the things, including, one of the most notorious ones is grappling for 3rd edition. It's always a major rules issue. But it had attacks of opportunity. It had just this really deep mechanical gravity that kind of drew you into like making die rolls when you even necessarily didn't even need to. As a D6 player, for me that was the biggest disconnect, is coming from, make it feel like the movies and the rules are secondary to actually the rules are the most important thing, and if you don't know this, you're going to get screwed.
Yeah, it's complicated. However, if you were a D&D player, you would slip right in. Like, all the crunch and difficulty would be like barely anything. You'd be familiar already. So
the D20 version also sits at a very strange place chronologically, because you have the first game, the D6 Star Wars game, the West End Games version, which is exceptionally popular and had been around for 12 years. Then comes along the D20 core, not as well received, and gets replaced by Saga Edition just about 5 years later. Well, technically 7 years later. Sorry. There's that 5 years between the revised edition and Saga, but it sits at a weird point where it's like, okay, everybody really loved D6 Star Wars. Here comes D20. Everybody's like, I'm not sure about this. And by the time they get comfortable, here comes Saga Edition, which is, again, extremely popular. Everyone really likes it. So it's kind of like at that very unfortunate valley in between.
yeah, like, there is such a thing as oversaturating with systems. If you go too fast, you can outpace the audience a little bit. But Star Wars had such like voracious enthusiasm, and still does, arguably, that I think that they were able to just take shots if they found one that like really resonated.
If you are a fan of Star Wars D20 and you want to see more content, Reddit has a great subreddit for this. It's actually called r/Star Wars D20, and they are still producing content. They're still playing it. They're enjoying it greatly. So there is a community for you if you are into this game. Obviously, KOTOR and KOTOR 2 didn't hurt either. Like, that helped spread the message of how good the system was. But the general fan consensus is that if you're going to play Star Wars D20, play the revised edition from 2002.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I would say it's not a bad system. I'd say it's functional. I'd say it's fun, and I'd say it even has some genuinely excellent mechanics in it. However, I will also say I think it's the least appropriate system for capturing the feel of the films.
Why would you say that?
Well, like, I mean, going back to the mechanical definitions of things, and it really leaned into tactical combat more than D6 had. You really wanted miniatures, you really wanted maps, you really wanted not dungeon crawls, but there was certainly the exploration side of things lent itself more to ancient temples and starships than here's this unspoiled world that we have to search for this Sith artifact, right? That's just where I'm coming from is that perspective. And to be fair, I'm a grognard. I'm an old man. I liked my D6 Star Wars, and by golly, it was good enough for me. So take everything I just said with a grain of salt. Those are only my personal opinions. D20, as I said, and I still believe, is fine. It's fine. It's just I think it is not the best for making it feel like the movies.
Yeah, and it does kind of feel bad when you're like 5 feet away, like 1 square out of range for your force power. Like, am I?
Really? Yeah. Yeah, it does. I mean, that is a weird moment to have in Star Wars. It's fair to say that the fans were very divided on this one. It was very widely criticized. And I think a lot of it has to do with people like me who were the West End guys, the D6 guys. And I think it's very possible, I would argue even probable, that people like myself did not give this game a fair chance.
Clearly, what has to be done is you just got to slot it right into an ongoing 3rd edition game and just put them together. Just isekai a Jedi in.
I would say the D20 game's reputation suffered disproportionately because of who was rejecting it. Because the vocal community that had existed for Star Wars RPG had deeply emotionally invested into a very different system. And the D20 version felt kind of like a hostile takeover of something that we beloved. We loved it. So it's also true, I think, though, that if you talk to anybody who did try it, once they tried it, they loved it. And KOTOR, for me, was that moment where I was like, okay, I actually kind of love this. HK-47, what a great character. But no, seriously, like the KOTOR games were just, that was like me going, I probably should have given this game more of a chance.
Yeah, well, like KOTOR is special because KOTOR defined a whole new era in the Star Wars setting. KOTOR created the feel of the Old Republic, right? And it did so in a way that really stimulated the imagination. I think that to this day, we have people who are begging for them to return to the Old Republic to do something in that setting, to call back. Like, people were upset that the episode 7 through 9 were not set in Tor, right?
Right. I am still that guy. I'm like, why don't we have a Knights of the Old Republic show? Please, for the love of God, go make a Knights of the Old Republic show. So good.
Yeah, it's really something. I think that man, the feel of those games is just important to me. I think they're so friggin' cool.
Here's one for you, Eric.
Annoyed query. Master, are you having trouble understanding my excellence? Statement. HK-47 speech patterns did more for the expression and enthusiasm for droids than any character since R2-D2. Observation. HK-47 endures as a fan favorite character from all of Star Wars. Bemused theory. HK-47 will remain as possibly the most called back to character in the entirety of Star Wars. We got Star Wars, we got HK in every one of the Old Republic games, the online game too. Like the MMO, they brought back HK multiple times. I think that the IG units in Mando played off HK a little bit. Like we're talking like iconic.
He's literally one of the best companions in all of computer gaming, period. And I will stack him up against anybody from Mass Effect or Dragon Age, you name it.
He was in Galaxies too. Yeah, okay. That is a level of exposure you like only get from characters like Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
that's pretty iconic.
That is pretty great. Now we come to, well, I should don't want to move on yet. Have you anything more you'd like to say about the D20 Core Edition from Wizards of the Coast?
No, but I have a lot I want to say about KOTOR. We'll
Go nuts!
water also. One second.
It's your show. Go show. Talk about KOTOR.
I need water. I'll have my Death Star on camera here. Hang on. There. All right, 1 second.
It looks like she's coming from that small moon. That's no moo. Yeah. So one of the things I really enjoyed about the D20 version was those reputation mechanics, and I made a character who was the Black Prince of Deneb, and I had like the worst reputation. And my whole goal was to like be this very intimidating dude who had like a really like dark backstory. And the game master decided that all stormtroopers in his game were immune to intimidation, and I was like, oh, I am in the wrong game. Oh no!
All the stormtroopers.
Yes.
Yeah, notoriously unflappable super soldiers, the Imperial stormtroopers.
Listen, there's guys that, love the 501st just a little too much, and I think he might have been one of those guys.
Okay, maybe the 501st, but that's one of at least 501, right?
I'm just saying. I think he was a big fan. So Wes Luce is like, yeah, no.
Bullshit, perhaps, yeah. God.
I would love for you to get it all out of your system, either KOTOR or D20 core, because I've got it all out of my system. I've told you everything I like or disliked about it. What's your thoughts? Your final thoughts?
My thoughts are that the crunch of the D20 system and the way that impedes the cinematic nature of the experience is entirely absolved when it's handled for you by a computer. And that part of the reason that KOTOR works so well is that when you pressed a button, you shot force lightning. When you interacted with the game, you had sound effects pulled from the Star Wars sound bank. You had majestic Williams-esque themes playing in the background. It worked. It just worked. It delivered a lot of things that we didn't really have until the soundboard era of gaming. And that matters a lot to set the tone for a Star Wars game. It does a lot of work for you. Removing all of that crunch, taking the rough edges and sanding them down and making it accessible to just explore this environment and use these abilities made it run well. It just felt good. It felt right. The KOTOR games are so well written and minimize the difficulty of access to such a great extent that they endure. They are worth playing to this day. It is a good couple of games. Furthermore, I am playing KOTOR 2 tomorrow on Twitch because I love these.
Nice. Yeah, be sure to check out my boy Darth Sion when he's breaking out of that ship early.
Oh yeah.
And the reveal of Darth Nihilus on the bridge of his Star Destroyer, or it's like some other ship, but it's like a Star Destroyer. So
I am a known cool mask enjoyer. I will say both Nihilus and Revan are like up there for greatest of all time. Amazing masks, agreed. Okay, so any other thoughts on D20 before we move on to Saga? It's cool. Well, it was your first, so yeah, it was part of my like fantasizing about like playing RPGs back in the day, and I sunk my teeth in a little bit, but I never got to like really get it off the ground. So maybe someday. I think I would run that okay. I'm pretty familiar with third, so who knows? Like maybe I'll just take my time to try one of these, but you know. Fair enough. So 2007 comes along. And Wizards of the Coast is like, cool, we're done with D20, and now we're going to create Saga system, the Saga Edition. It is widely considered to be the best of WotC's Star Wars systems and a high point for the license overall. It was a substantial overhaul of the earlier D20 edition rather than an incremental update. This was not a 3.5. This was closer to a 4th edition, if you will. First of all, they reduced the number of classes down to 5. 5 total. 5 classes. Jedi, Noble, Scoundrel, Scout, Soldier. That's it. That was it.
The two Jedi classes were now talent trees, basically, within the Jedi class. So Guardian and Counselor is what I'm talking about there. They did remove the Vitality wound system and replaced it with a hit point system and then a condition track. And the condition track was your cumulative injury or stun or poison or fatigue, and you could sort of track that along, like how poisoned am I, how fatigued am I, that kind of a thing. Similar to 4th edition Shadowrun in some ways. They did not have, they reduced all the Force skills down to one skill. Use the Force. They consolidated the skills, which they merged Spot and Listen, if you remember that, down to just Perception. All right, Vera and I talked about this in our D&D. We have an episode where we create D&D characters and we talk about how much she likes having Spot and Listen being different things. I'm on the opposite side of that. I'm like, just make one skill, please.
It's for verisimilitude.
Hey, title drop. Hey. They didn't have any prestige classes. Instead, they had the talent trees. And one of the things that Saga Edition does better than almost any other is it incorporates Jedi into a group without making them feel like they're overpowered. They brought balance to the Force.
I'm not sure that should be the goal, though. That's my problem.
We've talked about game balance before, and I'm kind of in Vera's camp. I prefer fun over balance. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, like we exemplify this in the Warhammer Fantasy side of things, right? Where we have ogres and stuff that are not balanced with a party of salt of the earth from the Reichland, right? Like if you have a high elf and an ogre and 2 rat catchers, the party will not be balanced and there will be narrative consequences for that. And that's sort of what it's like having a Jedi in the party. They're the ogre of the Star Wars setting.
Now, did you play a lot of Saga? Because this is the one I did not play.
I did not play a lot of Saga. I've read Saga, though.
Okay, here we are. We found an edition of the game that neither one of us have played. Which is a shame, because like the more I read about it, the more I'm like, this is actually really cool. One of the things that Saga had that was special was a thing called Destiny. It was a system, that a Destiny system. You defined a destiny for your character, like a goal reflecting their arc. And you got mechanical benefits for pursuing it. This completing or meaningfully advancing your destiny granted bonuses, and going against it imposed penalties. One reviewer said this is the most original contribution to RPGs at large made by a Saga system, was the idea of your destiny. Now, there is one missed opportunity here, though.
Oh.
The missed opportunity, and I really wish they had done this, if you were a Jedi who died before fulfilling your destiny, there should have been a mechanic so you could come back as a Force ghost.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right? Oh my God, how did they miss this? I'm sure there's a fan supplement or something out there that does it. Almost certainly a third-party product that does it. Because, that's Obi-Wan's arc right there, is like, dies before he fulfills his destiny, comes back as a ghost. I don't know.
No, there's something to that. The Force Ghost as a mechanic is intriguing. It requires death, though, which is complicated. That there's a certain challenge there. Or dissolving into the Force, as seen in certain movies we won't get into.
Interestingly enough, this is also Bill Slavicek's third Star Wars game. He worked on the West End game, he worked on the D20 Core, and he worked on Saga. Unfortunately, this does complete his arc. He did not get to work on the Edge of the Empire one, though he did try. And I did, in fact, talk to him and took his business card and gave it to the lead designer of Edge of the Empire and said, Bill wants to work on this game. So, I mean, I can tell you with authority, he definitely wanted to complete the cycle, but didn't get a chance to, unfortunately. But
he didn't get to fulfill his destiny.
No, he did not. He did not get to fulfill his destiny. So Bill Slavicek did work on 3 out of 4, which is really good. Really, really good for a single designer to touch Star Wars quite as much as he did. It's a remarkable achievement if you really want to think about it. There's also a really fun running gag in the Saga Editions. There were 3 pre-generated characters from the D20 era. Sealin Wez Rorwar, the Wookiee, and Deal Cerule. And they were reused in the Saga Edition core rulebook as pre-generated characters examples 7 years later. Arguably, they are possibly the most playtested characters of all time. I didn't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. My only touchstone is the like the Pathfinder archetypal characters.
And I do like that the wound point, vitality point thing from the D20 edition, I like that is basically a canonical explanation of why stormtroopers often miss. They're actually just taking away vitality points every time they miss.
Finding an excuse for them mechanically is very funny.
Hey, we've got a super chat from Aramob. Thank you, Aramob.
Thanks so much.
Sith character naming is the easiest of all. They're all edgy teens naming OCs after bad things. Darth Meevil, Lord Domantor, Darth Influenza. Fun.
Well, no, it would be Darth Fluenza, much in the way that Darth Insidious becomes Sidious, Darth Invader becomes Vader, Darth Fluenza. You gotta drop the IN.
Darth Fun.
Darth Fun sounds like such an awesome character. Where we're getting this like Dwarf Fortress-esque level of fun where they've constructed this elaborate labyrinth for you. It's Type 3 fun. You get to visit their Sith Lord funhouse, which is kind of what the Academy in Korriban is like anyway. So
if you go back to the early era of the internet, we had Tripping the Rift, which was a parody of sci-fi, and it included a villain called Darth Bobo, who was a clown and a Sith Lord at the same time.
Truly horrifying.
I mean, all right. So Darth Bobo, in case anybody remembers him. That is about all I have to say about Saga, unless you had more you wanted to get into. The reception was it was very well received. RPGNet said the third time is the charm, and called it a tremendous improvement over its D20 predecessors.
Yeah, it goes to show like how much having some structure for character narrative can do for the feel of a game. We've tugged on this thread a lot in different Cubicle 7 productions, like having ambitions and goals, things like that can structure a campaign, give things to the characters that they'll find satisfying, and provide a loose layout for like what kinds of themes you should include. Like that really does a lot for the feel at a table, I think. Having some guide stone for the GM to inform like what kind of vibe different adventures have, where they lead.
Go on. No, please.
No, just I think it's useful. I think it makes things run well for everybody at a table.
If the D6 version is the most improvisational, then the Saga Edition is probably the most. It has the most depth. You have a lot of layers. You have a lot to dig in on. You have a lot of mechanics to support that. And if you dig that particular approach, this is definitely that game for you. And it does of course earn the accolade of being the first one to encapsulate this the first 6 Star Wars films instead of just 3.
Yeah, it had multiple eras of play, right, and had like some kind of description for each of them. You could go off in the comic book future, which is now retconned.
I think that the Saga Edition is probably the most. It covers the most ground because it does. There was I think a source book for Dark Empire, wasn't there, and for Shadows of the Empire, which were like some side issues or side stories, I should say. Like it covered the Saga Edition covered a lot. It covered a hell of a lot. I need one now that covers the Mandalorian. Where's my Mandalorian Star Wars RPG?
Honestly, it would be pretty cool.
Right? I want to get that game, and I want to run it for my players, and I want to say this is the way. Yeah. Anyway.
I would play that game.
So that was Saga Edition, which was a big hit, and it lasted for quite a while. It was just double check. It was 07 to 09, so 2 years. But it had a lot of books. Legacy Era Campaign Guide, Unknown Regions, Galaxy of Intrigue, Scavenger's Guide to Droids, Galaxy at War, Jedi Academy Training Manual, Rebellion Era, Scum and Villainy, The Force Unleashed, and Knights. It had a KOTOR. It had an actual KOTOR guidebook. So if you literally want to play KOTOR without plugging in a console or using your computer, you could do it with the Saga Edition.
I didn't know that. That's pretty exciting, actually. That
Here's Vera right now.
I do like Nar Shaddaa.
Oh, Nar Shaddaa is a great planet, and you can. I mean, I've revisited it in my current D6 game.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
Nar Shaddaa. It's just so cool. Yeah, the D20 version did cover the Thrawn trilogy, and it also covered. I don't think it. I think it also the core book also covered the prequels a little bit, or at least the first prequel.
There was a cross-pollination with the Thrawn series, as I recall, so it sort of follows.
Right. Well, now we get to the one where I was literally in the room.
First-hand experience.
But before I start talking about it, I think you should talk about it. What would you like to tell everyone about the Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars RPGs that started with Edge of the Empire in 2012?
Well, the Fantasy Flight Games RPGs use a somewhat unique system that is shared with one other game, Warhammer Fantasy 3rd Edition. They use a special and unique die system that has different faces that indicate different sorts of results that can either have really good benefits for an attempted action or that can have unintended consequences. And these pools are rolled different kinds of dice depending on the action and have different results, different facings, and create interesting moments in play.
Yeah, the narrative dice system is really interesting. It makes the Fantasy Flight version the most narrative of the bunch, I would say.
I find this very easy to run. I find it quite well cinematic because the interpretive nature of the narrative dice means that when things get complicated, you sort of decide how in an appropriate way. And it feels really good because, again, this is a setting where you sort of get feel bad from having a 5-foot gap between your Force sleep and where you're trying to go. Whereas here, when things get complicated, as Ross said earlier, they complicate in a fun Star Wars-y way, such as Han Solo shooting out the console, etc. Things being escalated in a way that is narrative forward. It feels right. And I would go so far as to say I like how that manifests more in Star Wars than I do in 3rd edition of Fantasy.
Well, I can tell you with some authority. I was there when Warhammer Fantasy 3rd edition was being developed. I was literally sitting at the desk next to Jay Little as he was working on that product. And I can tell you, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition was a market failure. It did not do super well. Partly because the original box set was $100. The CEO of Fantasy Flight really thought that was the right way to go, and turned out probably not so much. However, Edge of the Empire benefited from all the time and energy spent on developing the system for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition. And it is, as you say, it's an evolution of that. It's literally like Jay was like, okay, I'm going to design Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition, and after that's over, I'm going to design Star Wars. And they're like, hey, why don't you just take that and iterate on it, build it, make it better, and then do it in Star Wars. He's like, okay. So we got Wesley. It's $100. That's a lot for a core box set. Yes.
And they gave you a lot with that. They gave you there were these like cardboard sheets and things for reference. There were cards. There were a lot of unique die. Like we said, there was a unique die system. So you weren't getting nothing, but it was a lot. Yeah.
So, yeah. Again, I'm in the room for a lot of this, so I want to make sure you get your chance to talk about it. But if you're ready for me to get into the history, I'm ready to do that.
Yeah, I feel like the tone of Star Wars and the cinematic nature of it and the sort of pulpy roots that it has, because again, Star Wars pulls from samurai fiction and like the stylized violence and a lot of it high adventure style things, again, like a shared DNA with Indiana Jones, right? It lends itself well to that kind of resolution system, that kind of falling forward style. So I think that is less true for Warhammer, which is a little more grim and perilous, where your unexpected result, your disaster, is less fun. Right? Like when something goes like wrong when you're casting magic in Warhammer, it's like, oh god, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone. In Star Wars, it's like, oh no, a hijink. What happens now? Exciting. The feeling is different.
The tone difference is sharp. You're right about that.
Well, and that tonal gap, it makes complications more fun in one case. So
Warhammer had more of an impact on the Fantasy Flight games than you think. It's not just the rules, it's also the approach. And this is where I can step in a little bit. The higher ups at Fantasy Flight were very, very happy with Warhammer 40K roleplay, because we had Dark Heresy and we had Rogue Trader and we had Deathwatch and we had Black Crusade, and we were, getting ready for Dark Heresy 2nd edition and Only War. We had Only War too. And they were like, man, this is great. We are just selling tons of products. Rogue Trader was the #1 best-selling book of its year, or best-selling product, I should say. And Deathwatch was like right up there the year after. Like I remember I still have the newsletters that talk about like how good they were doing for the company. And so the guidance that came down from above when we were making the Star Wars license was, do it like you did Warhammer 40K. Split it up. Don't do just a Star Wars game. Do a Star Wars game that is this, and a Star Wars game that is that, and a Star Wars game that is another thing, because that's what was working really, really well. And in case I haven't said it before, getting the Star Wars license is also why Fantasy Flight stopped making 40K roleplay. That is literally what happened. Is we were called into a meeting, and the CEO's like, okay, so here's the new thing, and he did the PowerPoint burn in the screen of the Star Wars logo. He's like, we're doing this from now on. This is our focus. And because part of the focus was miniature games, which would have been X-Wing and then later Legion and later Armada, Games Workshop was like, hey, we don't want to give our license to competitors who are making, miniature games, which is our core business. So Games Workshop was like, we will be happy to not have you have that license anymore. And Fantasy Flight was like, that's cool. We weren't planning on it anyway, because we're putting all of our effort into Star Wars. So that's what happened. That's why Fantasy Flight stopped making Warhammer 40K roleplay and started making Star Wars. And so Star Wars is influenced by Star Wars Edge of the Empire is influenced not only by Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition in terms of its rules, it's influenced by the Warhammer 40K roleplay line in the way that it was presented. And I got to be a voice in the room when we were sitting there talking about, like, hey, basically all the role-playing game guys got together and we're like, what are we going to do? We have Star Wars. What do we do? And, a lot of things were thrown around. A lot of ideas were bounced back and forth. I don't want to take sole credit, but I know for a fact that I was one of the guys saying, hey, remember how it was all Jedi or no Jedi? I said, what if we start our first game as the no Jedi game? Let's make the first game be what a lot of the D6 guys remember as the best part, which is the idea that you can be on the fringes of the galaxy, cruising around in your sweet custom van, i.e. your YT 1300 freighter, and doing fun smuggler scoundrel crap. I think that's where I wanted to play. I was like, I think this will be a great way to give us time to develop really good force rules, and instead just offer a very curated vision of Star Wars role playing that is in line with what a lot of people want to do anyway.
That's smart. It pares down the number of like really complex interactions you need to account for, but it also lets you put out a tonally tight game first.
Yeah, so if you were like, hey, where's my Jedi in 2012, you're like, hey, where's my Jedi? Blame it on me. I'm the guy. I'm the guy who was like, let's focus on smugglers and scoundrels and do Edge of the Empire first.
The villain.
Yeah. I'm also responsible for Gand being a playable race in Edge of the Empire, and I am the guy. If you don't like the way skills are written or the way the skill system works in Edge of the Empire, that's also me. So Professor Shep Ross was the Inquisitor. I mean, kind of. Kind of. So that was, I mean, we had a moment where we were all sitting there. I remember this. We were all sitting in a circle, and we had that moment where somebody was like, are we really going to go to market with a Star Wars game that has no Jedi in it? And everybody sat with that for like 10 seconds. And we were just like, and then at least one or two people were like, I think we can do it. I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's right, because like the Jedi are not the only iconic element of the setting. Like, so this is pulling from my own perspective on the Star Wars setting as sort of rooted in samurai films, which it is, because Star Wars Episode 4 was a direct rip of a Kurosawa film. And in that setting, in that kind of environment, that warring states period, there are more stories than just those about samurai. Even samurai who have cool telekinetic powers. You can tell a story about bandits. You can tell a story about smugglers with a heart of gold trying to get by under the watchful eye of different powers that be. Going back to the roots of the setting, going back to the core idea, what it's about, you're in fact doing something bold and intelligent where you're pulling from different corners that are equally iconic but less flashy.
Yeah, it was so Edge of the Empire was the first game in the line. It established the core system. There was a beta version, a softcover rulebook that we brought out at Gen Con in 2012. This is right as I was leaving Fantasy Flight and heading to Texas to work on Darksiders 2, which you can see the mask up there. And I remember being kind of mad because I went to that Gen Con and the softcover book did not have my name in it. It was a misprint. And I was like, what? Actual?
Ooh.
Why is my name not in this? But it was fine. There was a beginner game that was released in December of 2012, and it's got a really good adventure in it. I do recommend that beginner's box. The thematic focus of Edge of the Empire is the fringe of civilization: smugglers, bounty hunters, pirates, outcasts, trying to survive in the Outer Rim under the shadow of the Galactic Empire. Its touchstones were things like the Mos Eisley Cantina, Jabba's Palace, Mandalorian stuff. I mean, it's was Mandalorian wasn't out by then, and neither was Solo, a Star Wars story. But we were riffing on the comics from Dark Horse at the time. We were riffing on a lot of those old Han Solo books I talked about from Brian Daley. Anything that we could find that was very Edge of the Empire we referenced, we brought in as source material, and there's a hell of a lot of it. A hell of a lot of Star Wars is literally just, hey, it's me and my buds, we're driving around our sweet custom van trying to avoid customs inspectors. I have a weird theory, and I want to throw it to you, Vera, but this is a theory that only a man of a certain age like myself really has the perspective, I think, to come up with. But I want to sanity check it, because I just may be ranting. I may be the old man ranting at clouds. But back in the day, before 1987, if you wanted to play sci-fi and you wanted to play a role-playing game, you played Traveler, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Traveler's core experience is you have a small ship and you are a band of traders and you're going out having adventures while also trying to make money in your little ship. And you're also trying to fly under the radar of an empire. And I feel like a lot of those people who are playing Traveler came over instantly to the West End D6 game. And I think a lot of them influenced that approach because it feels very much like it was the same group of guys.
I can see that. There's sort of a space fantasy energy, right? There's this desire to like go out in space truck, and you see I would say shared enthusiasm for franchises like Firefly among people who enjoy Scoundrels, right?
Firefly, absolutely. Although 2012, was Firefly on the air in 2012? I think, no, yeah. So Firefly had been around because I remember watching it back in 2005. So, yeah, so Firefly was part of the consciousness at the time. It absolutely would have impacted Age of the Empire as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Hey, Super Chat, would you like to read this one?
Yeah, Star Wars is the dream of the common man to do crimes with a wizard. Thank you, Era. Thank you. Yeah, there's something to that. The prequel trilogy really got into that, where you've got something these kind of renegade Jedi getting into mischief.
Now there are two of them. Wizard Crimes in Space, says Kinbo 9 Game. Yeah, I agree. Still need to watch Firefly.
It's pretty good.
It's a good show.
I recommend it.
So yeah, Edge of the Empire was the big deal. And it hit and it landed and everyone was like, okay, this is cool. I don't know about these weird dice. Because the system for Edge of the Empire uses a dice pool system, but unlike all other dice pool systems, it does not involve adding or removing dice from the pool. Instead, it's about interpreting the results of the dice. And this added a really interesting narrative layer to resolving actions in Star Wars. Have you played Edge of the Empire or Age of Rebellion or any of the...
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you tell the audience what your experience is like with this narrative dice pool before I get into it?
It is extraordinarily fun. My experience was that I had my players taking over a sandcrawler as part of their plan to get off Tatooine. They had to. There were some negotiations that went south for various parts, and one of them was in trouble, so they had to get off planet. And every scenario just escalated in some intriguing way. It wound up being far easier to run than I think any of them expected. There was like some hesitation, of course, but in practice, it's not hard to determine whether things are complicated or going really well. If you're getting your little Jedi symbol to get stoked over, if things are becoming quickly off the rails, it runs out nicely. Like I recall one scenario, like a complication die, was this attempt to put like leverage on somebody, and they started going for their blaster. Like it works out cool. Like it all feels cinematic. Like you get the beat and the resolution. You see the die roll and you can tell like, oh no, this is going to succeed in a funny way. And then things continue from there. You get like that pause. It builds suspense. It plays out really well because you create that sense of anticipation. You all know that things are going to take a turn here, and then you find out how and roll forward with it. It lines up really well tonally, again, with the kind of storytelling Star Wars tries to bring about.
The narrative dice system doesn't use numbers. Instead, it uses symbols.
Yes.
And there are 6 basic types of symbols with another one for specific force die. Their symbols are for success or failure, pretty easy, and they cancel each other out. Advantage and triumph, which also cancel each other out. If I'm remembering this correctly. Unfortunately, as one of the guys who play tested the game, there are like 8 different versions of this in my head, and I'm trying to remember which one is the correct one. There was so success or failure, advantage, and threat. Is that right? Advantage or disadvantage?
It's been a few years.
and then like triumph and despair were the other two. And then there was a force die that had light and dark side force symbols as well. And you would assemble a pool. You'd build a dice pool for a skill check, and you'd say, okay, based on your characteristics or your skills, you take the higher of the two, and you get that many green dice. The green dice was a 8-sided die, and it was your core positive dice. Then you could upgrade a number of your dice using the lower one, whether it was your characteristic or your skill, and those became yellow dice, which were D12s. They were even better positive dice. And that's where I think we get, anyway, it represented like an expertise that you had in the particular task. If it was favorable conditions, you would get a blue die, which is called a boost die, which is a D6. And it was kind of situational, advantage, disadvantage. And then the GM would say, okay, I'm going to give you a number of difficulty dice. These were purple dice. These were D8s, and these were your core negative dice. These represented the complexity of the task. And then if there were adverse conditions, you would get a black dice. A black dice was a D6, and this represented minor hindrances or bad conditions. You would roll everything together. Successes cancel failures, advantages cancel threats. Then you got the net results determining the outcome. Now, how did this work? When you would look at this die and you would try to make sense of it, how did that work for you, Vera?
It was very colorful and exciting.
It was very colorful. Yes, absolutely.
I'm not sure I can put it better than that. There was a unique joy to having my candy colored little pool, and at a glance determining like how many you totaled up. Like it's very intuitive in a way to have things neatly colored for you. Like, oh, we get some green ones. Oh, a yellow one. Wow, that's great. Oh, purple. Like, it was intuitive. It was fast. It was very satisfying.
I'm really glad you are not alone. A lot of people feel that way about the dice system.
And a group that had never played 3rd edition or anything like this picked it up in like 10 minutes. Like, we're talking like not complicated. Intimidating, perhaps. I think a lot of people are scared when they first see one of these die, right? They are ominous looking to those of us who have grown used to rolling standard D10s, but they're pretty intuitive.
We got a couple of comments I'd like to read before I talk about my experience with it. Istian Lion says, mixed successes are fantastic to stretch those GM creative muscles. And here's one you can read.
My favorite interpretation was a successful door unlock with a catastrophic other failure. So the door broke open and started the alarm. Yes, excellent, excellent. You can keep going, no delays, however.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
What was fascinating to me about this design is that Jay Little found a way to take the wild die concept from D6 and make that your entire pool, basically, of dice. For me, they often say that doctors make the worst patients, and I often think that sometimes game designers make the worst players, because we see the flaws in things that we've worked on more than anybody else, I think.
The most annoying thing in the world is to watch a movie with somebody who's like deep into gaffing, like somebody like works on set, and have them like point out every time there's like some kind of specific configuration. Oh, they could have lit this better. Oh, I can see the quarter of the tape there. Like, all right.
Oh, look, it's the boom mic.
No, pointing out the boom mic is a classic. And I assume that's what it's like to like play a random RPG with a game designer. Like,
sometimes that's true. For me, I feel like this game, the dice pool has some significant drawbacks. I never liked the idea that you could have a net neutral result. And in this game, you can roll a bunch of dice and get nothing because the advantages cancel out the disadvantages, the threats cancel out the successes cancel failures, and advantage cancels threats. So if that's what you roll and they're equal numbers, you can literally have times at the table where you roll a bunch of dice and literally nothing happens. Granted, that's rare, but it is a possibility. And
it is a sad result for your big, colorful die pool to have literally nothing.
Yeah, I did not care for that. I also felt that for most people, it created a bit of a burdensome aspect to rolling dice, in that it wasn't just I roll dice, now what happens, GM. Instead, it was I roll a bunch of dice, and the game master has to be like, okay, so you failed with advantage for the third time in a row. So you still don't find the thing, but something cool happens, and I have to come up with that third something cool in a row when all I really needed you to do is see if you could find the crate holding the Wookiee hides. So it felt like there was a burdensome element to it in the idea that every roll was a narrative beat that had to be explained or had to be interpreted or had to be resolved. I mean, I know that dice rolls resolve things, but it felt like it was kind of a bit more mental strain, I guess.
Right.
Whereas when you have like something like a wild die or a wrath die for Wrath and Glory, those results don't come up every single roll. Like you have, it's a roughly 33% of the time something interesting is going to occur, either something good or something bad, right? Which meant that 2/3 of the time it's just a roll and you go on with your story. Whereas with Edge of the Empire and the dice pool, it's like every single roll is like, okay, something happens, something interesting, something bad, something good, whatever. So I felt like that was a weakness in the dice design. However, all props to Jay Little. It's a damn good dice pool system. It's damn good.
They are perhaps the most exciting and colorful math rocks of all time.
They probably are. I think that's fair.
And you can play around this kind of thing. Like, there is a case for saying that if the die roll isn't exciting, it shouldn't be a roll. And just like, all right, screw it, you do that. But finding that in practice is hard.
Arabab says you failed, but find a $20 gift card. Wow.
Wow. Whoa.
That's hilarious. I like this one too from Victor, who says, sounds like it requires some improv chops to GM well. I feel like it did require more improv than usual. So
it is a setting that you will, or rather a system you will love if you are really stoked as a GM when you get an improv prompt. If you hate that and it makes you sweat and freak out, you will not enjoy it, because that is like, I would say like half to a third of all the die rolls require you to like really think on your feet and complicate the situation. And doing that in a way that is satisfying and fun forward and invigorating and fast is the challenge of the system and the fun of the system. But it does really want a GM who is super comfy, like grooving in that way.
There is a fun mechanic that I would like to ask you about. Would you like to talk about the Destiny pool?
Ooh, we wound up not getting to use this a ton at my table because we didn't get to play that many sessions, which was tragic. Man, it's been a while.
I can explain it if you prefer.
It had to do with the force point system, and I recall like light side die were for players primarily, and was it like an enemy system as well? Okay, please remind me.
So at the start of the session, all players would roll a force die, and the results formed a shared Destiny pool split between the light side, dark side tokens. And this basically generated a pool of tokens for you and a pool of tokens for the GM. The dark side tokens were for him. The light side tokens were for the players. You could spend a light side token to upgrade an ability die to a proficiency die. So it was a boost mechanic. You could spend light side points to make yourself better at things. The GM spent dark side points for the same thing on his rolls, so he could upgrade his dice against you. And this was interesting because it happened at the beginning of each session, so it meant you could sort of feel a flow of light to dark force across the campaign. You would remember those days where you rolled and a whole bunch of dark side points came up, and you would remember those days where it was mostly light side. It was an interesting mechanic to reinforce the ebb and flow of the force itself, which I liked. That is something I would really like to do for D6. I would like to find a way to bring that in. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's nice to see the force reflected this way. Oh God, I wound up opening my my old game to look at the sheets.
Oh no!
I'm gonna slow down. I'll hide that again. Man, it just felt right. Like my sensation playing it in every session was that it got to the heart of the right tonality. I also had my soundboard set up and all that. I was pulling from evocative places, but I think generally that ebb and flow is not only appropriate to the feel of the force and like how that manifests in the will of the universe and the midichlorians that will kind of sidestep, but also the storytelling structure of the movies.
Yeah, it did reinforce that feel. There were 4 different games in this line. The first one, Edge of the Empire, which we've briefly talked about. It's the Scoundrel and Smuggler one.
Mm-hmm.
There, 2014, we had Age of Rebellion. Age of Rebellion is, well, it's the Rebellion era. You get to be, Rebel Alliance versus the Empire. Basically the same thing, only a slightly different focus, which is how Warhammer 40,000 Roleplay did it. 2015, you get Force and Destiny, which is the Force-sensitive character one. If you want to play Jedi, this is the all-Jedi game. And there was a standalone tie-in beginner game in 2016 called The Force Awakens, which was connected to the sequel series. So the Fantasy Flight Games one is the only one that includes the sequel series, as well as the prequels and the original trilogy. In 2020, Fantasy Flight laid off its RPG department as part of a restructuring under Asmodee, and the RPG team at Fantasy Flight Games ended up creating a studio called Edge Studio, where they have continued to publish things, including Star Wars things, although the Star Wars line has been fallow for I want to say the last thing produced was actually right at 2020. And I don't think they've produced anything new since. My good friend, Sam Gregor Stewart, is the lead developer over at Edge Studios on this property and many others. He's a guy that I hired to work on Rogue Trader. He was an editor in the Fantasy Flight Games team who showed a genuine and amazing skill at working on role-playing game products. And I was like, man, you're good. You need to be a designer full-time. Editing is all fine, but you've got a bright future ahead of you. And he did. He definitely did. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm the one who brought him into the RPG space as a professional.
Aw. A protege.
It's true. Sam, if you're out there, you rock, dude. You're so good.
Hell yeah.
Let's talk about the careers. They didn't have classes. They had careers. And the careers there were 6 for each of these game systems. Edge of the Empire had Bounty Hunter, Colonist, Explorer, Hired Gun, Smuggler, and Technician. Age of Rebellion had the Ace, the Commander, the Diplomat, the Engineer, the Soldier, and the Spy. Force of Destiny had the Consular, the Guardian. These should sound very, very familiar to you, Vera. The Mystic, the Seeker, the Sentinel, and the Warrior. And they all had specializations that were kind of like a prestige class that you could further specialize your character into as you went. There were talent trees for each of these specializations. They had a grid of abilities you could unlock by spending your experience points. There were a lot of species you could play between Twi'leks, Rhodians, humans, Trandoshans, Wookiees, Gand, Bothans, Mon Calamari, and droids. Each species had its own characteristic profile. It had wound strain thresholds, starting experience points, and species abilities that made them meaningfully different. The Gand had a really fun one where you could actually be what's called a findsman, where they can actually they're a bit like a prophet. They think they can see the future and they follow what they believe is visions of what is to come. Your destiny, so to speak. As Yoda would say, your destiny it is. Whoa. Think size makes a warrior great, do you?
Yoda, who was noted as having a strength score of 7 in the D20 game.
You had 2 health tracks. You didn't have hit points. You had wounds and strain. Wounds were your physical injury, and when you lost all your wounds, you were incapacitated. Strain was mental and physical stress, and when you maxed that out, you would be unconscious. There were also, I think one of my favorite bits is what's called the engagement mechanic. This was a numerical score that was tied to a character's themes and created ongoing Game Master supplied complications. This was the why are you adventuring hook. In Edge of the Empire, this was called obligation. Remember this, Vera?
Oh boy, it's been a few years. It sounds right. I recall having a sit-down talk about this at the start of the campaign.
So an obligation was a hook that represented a debt or a bounty or a criminal record or family responsibility or an addiction or an oath. It was something that was tracked across the campaign. And at the start of each session, the Game Master would roll percentile dice. If the roll falls within your obligation range, then the complications are triggered. So if you have a debt and the Game Master rolls the percentile dice and it comes up underneath that number, your debt is going to be a part of the session. This could be pursuers or favors or story hooks. You could, in fact, take multiple obligations if you really wanted to, in exchange for extra starting credits or experience points. It represented the desperation of a life on the fringe. And people liked it. People liked it a lot. This was Han Solo. I don't have the money with me. Moments when he shot first. By the way, he totally shot first. Age of Rebellion replaced obligation with duty, the call of duty. Some might say.
The cod.
Yes, instead of a burden that created complications, though, duty represented your commitment to the rebellion. And it accumulated positively through heroic deeds. This is something that actually went up. When your collective duty reaches 100, I said duty, they all gain a contribution rank and it resets. So it's like you're actually gaining rank in the rebellion. It was a way to determine how your career was going. Will I be a general someday, or am I stuck being a ship driver my whole life? That kind of thing. Duty types included combat victories, counterintelligence, espionage, personnel, political support, and sabotage. And this was kind of like your specialty. Like, this is what I want to be good at, or I want to be known for, kind of things. Mm-hmm. Does this sound even more familiar?
Oh yeah.
Then Force of Destiny introduced morality, which was a numerical scale representing alignment on the light or dark side of the Force spectrum. Everybody starts out in the middle at 50 and then went up or down based on your actions. And if your morality dropped below 30, you were now a dark side character. And if it rose above 70, you were a firmly light side character. It deliberately made dark side temptations situational and problematic rather than a simple switch, which I thought was cool. But it was a little bit on the random side. And then this is why combining parties across all 3 games made for some very unusual mixed party play was a little complicated because of the way these three things work.
We had a little of that. It worked okay, though. There was some consideration.
Well, please, if you have experience with duty or obligation, I'd love to hear it. Or morality.
As I recall, we had one Force-sensitive type who had much more concern for their morality than our smugglers and Tatooine. And she was trying to get off planet, and it created us some interesting tension because their mechanical motivators and concerns were a little bit different than one another. So that friction was the prompt for some interesting roleplay scenarios. Like, it worked okay, I think. It's a little more tracking on the GM side, right? A little more to consider, but it ran well. It ran well.
If I had to point out an area where I think there's criticism that's pretty consistent, not of the dice system for these games, it was Starship Combat. Did you have any experience playing Starship Combat in these systems?
I deliberately avoided it.
You're not alone. I can tell you that.
I'm sorry. I don't like running naval combat to begin with in most games. I will sometimes. I am terrified of like 3 degrees of freedom, like trying to make it run well.
So some of the things that were issues was there was a shared hull pool that made ship combat basically binary. Either everyone wins or the ship is destroyed. Those were your only real results. It was very difficult to be like, we won, but our ship is bashed up. Flying as a maneuver meant that pilots felt very passive compared to gunners. And there wasn't really any kind of mid-combat repair thing you could do. Single pilot starfighters were especially clunky because you could either move or shoot, basically. I mean, it's more complicated than that, and there's ways to do both. But it was one of those things where it's like, I can either change my position or I can open fire at full effect, and that made dogfighting feel really slow. So,
which is sort of the opposite of how you want it to feel, right?
Again, this one captured a lot of Star Wars in it. There was a Clone Wars era thing called Rise of the Separatists. They did Revenge of the Sith with Collapse of the Republic. They had a Rogue One / Rebels era book called Dawn of the Rebellion, which I thought was that's my jam right there. Like, yes, please, more of that. It also had a very, very strongly positive critical reception throughout. For 8 years, this game was made. I mean, you could argue people are still playing it now, certainly 6 years later, but for 8 years as an active, ongoing thing, people were playing it and they were really, really liking it. Can you discuss your group's reaction to it and how they enjoyed it?
My group loved it. Like, I feel like it was one of the easiest ins we've had. Like, I'll put it like this. All right. My group found it so natural to play and so easy to get into that not only did our session 0 last like a fourth of the time expected, it naturally flowed into the first session of actual gameplay just from people experimenting with their roles. Like, we went from like this process of going around talking about people's characters directly into like what they're up to on the planet, into like, oh, well, you know each other here. And it rolled in a way that was like really fluid. I've never seen that happen in another game, actually, having just discussing the facts of the characters, what they're about, what they're motivated by, rolling so smoothly into the start of the game. It was unplanned, ran really well, and it was a cool experience. I still treasure that.
Here's a quick fun fact. Lightsabers were explicitly mechanically forbidden in Edge of the Empire for any non-Force users.
Yeah, as they probably should be, right? Like, I think those are... We
took that no Jedi shit seriously, guys. We were like, no Jedi means no Jedi. You literally cannot use a lightsaber unless you're force sensitive. And yeah, it locked out we locked the entire player base out of it by design because
What about Finn, Ross?
Because the lightsabers were relics that nobody should have on the edge of the Empire. They were, an elegant weapon for a more civilized time.
Yeah, nobody's civilized here.
So also another fun fact, the lightsaber that was published in Edge of the Empire, though, was stronger than the starting ones you got in Force of Destiny, because the ones in Force of Destiny were meant to grow with you. So they started out at a lower point and they would then improve. Whereas the one that was listed in the book for Edge of the Empire was kind of like an already upgraded, somebody left this behind kind of relic. So it was technically stronger, which I thought was a fun fact.
Yeah, that's a neat way to do it. I appreciate the idea that the crystal and the lightsaber kind of evolves with you too. It makes sense thematically to me, and it's mechanically good also because it's weird to frequently replace one's lightsaber. It's sort of a strange thing to do. KOTOR did this. You upgraded the crystals and things, and you had into the player crystal that would evolve with you as you changed your force relationship, and pretty cool.
Well, let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses. Would you like to start? I bet you can already guess what the strengths are.
Number one strength, a very handsome design team.
Flattery will get you everywhere, and no, that is not true.
Number two, beyond that undeniable fact, really flexible and interesting system for narrative, failing forward, for complications, for cool cinematic scenarios. The die system is just good for all of this. It engenders exciting moments in play. It is easy to run. It feels good.
Yeah, the dice is absolutely one of the things that people call out because it does organically create that situation in Star Wars where something happens that's either good or bad, but also has, yes and or yes but attached to it at the very end. Because Star Wars is a bunch of that. And the having a dice pool with two axes, not just success and failure, but also advantage or threat, it made Star Wars appropriate complications happen at the table without the GM needing to intentionally inject them into the scene. I would argue that Wild Eye does a similar thing, just less often. Less often, and less, and with more improvisation required. Let's put it that way. But yeah, it's very, very cool. People also praise the Jedi balance, in that the greatest structural achievement compared to its predecessors is that Jedi can adventure with non-Jedi and not feel like everyone else should be playing Jedi. It's the only system where you can have a mixed party.
Yeah, balance is brought to the Force. Istheven says that Jedi started off as weak. I actually had our Force-sensitive player not properly a Jedi at all to explain why they were mechanically not that tough and were compatible with the other party members, but it worked well. It ran well. It is good for gameplay balance. If you want the fantasy of starting off and being like a Jedi, you will not feel like that guy. But that's sort of necessary if you want the party to be roughly even. It's a different mechanical concern. I think it worked well there.
Yeah, this was the goal with the way Jedi were handled is really look at the Rebels series where you have the kid who's just learning how to be a Jedi, and you have the other guy who is a Jedi, but he doesn't have all the cool tricks that all the Jedi guys have, or he has some of them, but they don't work nearly as often, right? And I think that's what they were going for there.
If you really want the Jedi to stand out, you can just bump them a little bit, give them literally more capability. Here's a higher level character.
People praise the character flexibility as well. They felt that it was superior to the West End Games templates, which were really just a name and a bunch of starting stats. And the Wizards of the Coast class and level system. Characters built around the same career in the Edge of the Empire system can be very different because they have different specialties, what choices they made on the talent trees. They can end up feeling very different even though they started at the same point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one where I absolutely agree 100%. One of the things that's praised about Edge of the Empire is the production quality. I believe, and so do many other people, that the Edge of the Empire series was the most beautiful version of Star Wars RPGs ever made. The West End games had mostly black and white art with a few color plates. The WotC versions had mostly stills from the films as its internals. You remember this, right?
Well, I quite liked those. Like, so I have a soft spot for just random poses of Han Solo next to like cropped images from the comics being dropped next to each other in the base. I thought that was cool. But I had a lot of the like eyewitness books that also did this, like the like visual encyclopedia of Star Wars, that kind of thing, the big picture books. So
yeah, Professor Chef says Kanan and Ezra are from Rebels. That's who I was talking about. They're a nice model, really, to use in the dark times. Yeah, just so I know the team at Fantasy Flight very, very well. I know their art team, and a lot of the artists that worked on the Age of the Empire also worked on Warhammer 40K. We had built up a group of great artists and great art directors and stuff through that period. So the Edge of the Empire, Force of Destiny, and Age of Rebellion, they all really benefited from that experience. And they do look beautiful. They're so good.
mm-hmm.
They're rated amongst the best produced RPG products of the era, which I do agree with. And then people love the obligation or duty or morality systems. They love the way that it creates built-in GM hooks and party engagements. And rather than leaving the game master to introduce external motivations, this engagement mechanic makes each character's backstory a living part of the campaign. It is something I really like.
Yeah, we were talking about how that sort of meta concern of letting the characters choose their own path that they want to experience thematically does a lot for campaign structure. And when the system itself is already so effective at falling forward and introducing fun complications, there's a lot of room to make those tie in. It organically leads to really cool storytelling moments that are spontaneous.
Agreed. Would you care to guess at some of the common criticisms?
Not enough lightsabers. Furthermore, that it's hard to play without having all of the stuff ready because it does require a lot of specialized dice. So
the most persistent criticisms is the custom dice because they are proprietary. Yeah. They were expensive. It was between $15 to $30 for a set of dice for this game. They were not always available, and they were completely unsuitable for any other game.
Yeah, this was a critique of a third edition also, because people who want to play third edition of Fantasy now are kind of out of luck. Like, it was not sold to the same extent this was, and it's hard to find them.
If there's a community out there who really wants to play Warhammer Fantasy third edition, I would love to speak to them because I can tell you some stories about how that game was designed and where it came from.
There are people in the Rat Catchers Guild Discord, which is a Warhammer Fantasy fan community, that are diehard third edition truthers, and they are I would call them a vocal minority.
Well, I mean, we can cover Wifrip on this show.
I think we're gonna at some point.
Yeah, just make sure to invite them because I was the guy in the room when they were making Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay third edition, and I play tested it. My name's in the rule book, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the common complaints about the dice are not just the barrier to entry that you have to have them, but also because there's, in my opinion, there's those issues with the possibility of a null results and the narrative burden of you need to be a damn good improv guy to make sense of it sometimes. Starship combat is, of course, the main mechanical subsystem that is broadly seen as suboptimal. And the learning curve for new GMs is steeper than it appears because of the way the dice works, because of the simultaneous results on 2 axes. If you were an experienced narrator and you were looking for games that gave you that organic flow, then this is it. But if you were more interested in mechanical guidance, like a D&D or a D20 enthusiast, that was not going to be here. The morality system in Force of Destiny, the random nature of it was a little, people didn't like that very much. And it is probably the worst of the engagement systems. Like I prefer duty and I prefer obligation over morality.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have had this conversation. Legislating morality in a role play game is not a great idea. That's where alignment fell down.
Oh God, I had this terrible experience playing Baldur's Gate 3 like last night with some friends. There's a goblin camp at the start of the game.
Yes, I'm almost there.
Yeah, and we had a paladin in the party, and we decided to attack them because they were cooking and eating dwarves that they had captured on the side of the road, and we thought that sucked. And the paladin broke his oath for beating on these goblins because they were poor innocents. So that's 1,000 gold in the hole, baby. Like, all right, sure. I guess we're bad people now.
I also broke my paladin oath very early in Baldur's Gate 3.
It's absurd. Like, come on.
And lastly, the one of the complaints was about the fragmentation of the game line into these 3 distinct slices of Star Wars. I will defend that a little bit. I think having the narrow but deep slice really allowed you to play that particular slice very, very well. But I understand, people that had come from at least 3 or 4 editions of Star Wars before this, where it was all Star Wars all the time, as opposed to just a narrow but deep slice, where they felt that, hey, we have to buy 3 different games to get the full experience. I mean, I get that. I do. And especially if you're going to have a mixed party group, yeah, it starts to feel a little bit like White Wolf in the late 90s, where you're like, okay, so this guy wants to play vampire, this guy wants to play a werewolf, and this guy wants to play a mage. Awesome. Now I have 3 different rule systems I have to balance in the same party.
Yeah, there's a little bit of consideration involved.
So, the most persistent external comparison of the Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars is to the West End Games D6 system. Basically, people are divided over which one is the best Star Wars game of all time. Either it's the D6 system, which is where I land, or it's the Fantasy Flight Game system, which I worked on, so I win either way. No, I'm kidding. People feel that the Fantasy Flight Game system is narratively sophisticated, but it lacks the breezy spontaneity of rolling fistfuls of D6s with minimal looking things up in the book.
There is some amount of cross-referencing to find the right pools for the funny, colorful die.
The Fantasy Flight Game system does have more moving parts: the dice interpretation, the talent tree management, the obligations, the force pool. But while the West End D6 game is the faster, more cinematic version, the Fantasy Flight Games version has better mechanics for everything. And I do agree with that. I think that is an accurate result, with the exception of Starship Combat. Maybe. So if you're looking for the best version of the RPG that's ever been produced, it's one of these 2. D20 Radio did a retrospective and described the Fantasy Flight system as superior. It's a direct superior and a direct successor to the West End Games version, which it is. And I say this with authority because I was in the room. And Jay Little is also a fan of the West End Games system. So yeah, I can tell you that's absolutely true. So it is an evolution of a game that we already loved. And while there's aspects of it I don't love for Edge of the Empire, it is a damn good game. And I'm proud of working on it.
Hell yeah.
So, that takes us to the point in the show where we are going to talk about our, overall feelings on the matter. Where do you land on the the intersection of mechanics and cinematics and feels like Star Wars? Where do you flow in there?
I have the FFG system as my favorite enduring, I think. I would run that again in a heartbeat. It is fun. It is really cool. I think that it is in the right position for crunch, and it expresses things well, and it's very narrative forward in a way that I like. I am the type who enjoys things being a little bit more complicated. I like having my crunchy systems, so I really do quite like it. I would pull there for sure. I like my systems complicated, but I also like them evocative, and I think it hits the right notes for me.
That's cool. I dig it. I would actually really like to propose something. I think it would be fun for me to run a one shot of the D6 version.
Oh, yeah.
And see, let you experience what that's like, because it is, like I said, a very, very good system for not having to look stuff up. You can just,
I would love that.
Go. But my experience with playing the Fantasy Flight Games version was almost always playing it for work, which is not great. Like, I want to sit down and play this game for fun, and I need to find someone who could run that for me, and then I could get a different perspective on it that isn't just I'm literally working while doing this.
I could try and do that.
So I think I would like to put a pin in it on the map somewhere for Lorebeards Roleplaying, that we will eventually do a one shot of both and see how, and maybe talk about it afterwards. Like, how does it feel now?
And then we'll also do a Star Wars Sword Coast Isekai.
The joke is that if you isekai'd a Jedi into Warhammer 40,000, they'd be like, oh no, a million voices cried out at once, so we're suddenly silenced. Oh, there it goes again. And again. They would just, hear so many worlds dying in the forest, right? That's the joke. But a Jedi in a fantasy system would be, well, I mean, pretty overpowered. Let's just put it that way. Because there really is very little consequences for using force abilities, right? I mean, as long as you are comfortable being on the morality scale that you prefer, whether that's light or dark or gray or whatever, there's a lot of different ways to do it in Star Wars. You're not going to get, like, there's no miscast, there's no corruption, there's no mutation, right? It's a thing that you do. And then whatever else, high technology you brought along with you. So they would succeed very well in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, I would argue. Or D&D.
Oh, they'd be fine.
Right? Or D&D. I could just imagine someone shooting an arrow at a Jedi. I'd be like, wow, that's so slow. I had time to cut it like 3 or 4 times.
I feel like a lightsaber in the D&D setting would kind of break things a little bit, right? That feels like a lunchroom conversation that's been had before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. If you guys want us to talk more about, like, what would it be for Star Wars to attack another, or to compare Star Wars to another RPG setting, drop us a line in the Discord. We have a pretty awesome Discord, and we are going to be doing more polls in the future for topics and things of that nature. So if you want to be the first one to find out when we're putting up a poll for a topic, please go join our Discord. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into role-playing games in general, please do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button so the algorithm can spread our madness to even more minds out there on the internet.
Yes, please do.
Now, having gotten that contractually required bit of stuff out of the way, where would you like to go next, Vera? We have talked about all the systems. Is there any particular stories that you'd like to tell about Star Wars?
I've talked about my experience running a Tatooine. I've gone through my childhood gameplay with my siblings. I don't know. I was a big Star Wars enjoyer. Like it's been near and dear to my heart as long as I can recall. So it was cool to take a trip through memory lane here. Um, man, I look forward to revisiting KOTOR. There's that.
Oh man, KOTOR, yeah, I big fan. I would like to revisit KOTOR. Wasn't there a remaster like going on somewhere? I feel like they announced it and then it just died.
Yeah, I'm not certain. I know that the Old Republic, the MMO, is pretty decent.
Yes,
I like that. Okay.
I have some
If
friends who wrote it for it actually. So
Oh, wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah, it didn't quite hit the same because it's not as tight narratively, but all the individual character quests are fantastic. Just it's not its own contained RPG, right? You're like doing MMO things, so it's burdened by needing to structure that out. But they managed to make it, I think, the best written MMO,
I agree with that.
other than maybe Final Fantasy 14, which is also pretty strong. But
Interesting. I hadn't heard that. I'll have to go check that out.
oh, FF14 is pretty good. I know that Ryan's been playing a lot of that over the last like several months ish. It is an intelligent game, I would say.
I can share some amusing anecdotes from many, many, many years of Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Now, I want to be clear. A lot of these games were run when I was a younger gamer and let's say less mature in many ways. So you're going to hear about some things. You're going to say, wow, that sounds pretty whack. you're gonna hear about some campaigns. You're gonna be like, why were you even in this game? And how did you come up with this character? And usually the answer is because I was a young, dumb kid. So having said all that, would you like to hear the tale of the Jawa Jedi?
I would love to hear the tale of the Jawa Jedi. I am a Jawa enjoyer, I'll have you know.
Star Wars West End D6 game, I played a Jawa who was a Jedi. And I was not only focused on my force powers, in fact, I was less focused on my force powers than I was in just messing around with technology. I kind of preferred the Jawa side of the Jedi thing. And we were on a mission to a world that was under Imperial control, and we landed near the capital city. At the heart of the capital city was the Imperial control tower, where the governor had parked his personal skip ray blast boat at the very top. It was surrounded by a thick wall, heavily secured by stormtroopers. And this was a fortress, you know, and we were like, how are we going to get in there? Because the Alliance wanted us to recover a data card from this Imperial governor, because it was very important to access something somewhere else. Well, the plan that we had come up with at the time was like, well, we have all of these cut rate missile launchers that we picked up from a guerrilla operation on Onderon, and we're like, maybe we could just set up these missile launchers to create some sort of false attack on the fortress, and it would cause everybody to rush out of the fortress, and then we could sneak in during the confusion while they're trying to find out who launched the missiles. This seemed at the time like a good idea. Now, my Jawa Jedi had an R2-D2 that he had basically turned into a drone. He had an astromech that he turned into a drone that he could remote control. And I had filled it with thermal detonators. And the plan that I had was I was going to roll the droid up to the front gates, and if there was an opportunity, blow up the gates, which would then be part of the distraction, and everybody would be like, oh no, they're using, you know, they've blown a hole in the wall. There's no reason to hold the fortress if there's a big hole in the wall. That was my thinking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not especially a great plan, but
it's a plan.
So the droid rolls up to the front gate, and the game master says, okay, I'm going to roll to see if the stormtroopers notice anything unusual. And he rolls a perception roll, and that one on the wild die comes up. He rolls it again. It's another one. So it's a critical complication. Something terrible has just happened to these poor stormtroopers. And the game master thinks about it for about 20 seconds, and he goes, well, these two guys have had a really long day, and they have fallen asleep on duty. And I was like, oh, so nobody's guarding the gate. I roll the droid in through the service entrance. And he's like, you can absolutely do that because there's nobody cares. And then I said, okay, so Game Master, I am now piloting my astromech droid inside the perimeter. I said, what are the odds that astromechs, which are pretty common droids, who's going to be suspicious of a droid that's already inside, right? I mean, they would have to assume that the gate guards had checked me out and everything was fine. And he's like, I mean, yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense. So I roll the droid up to the control tower, and I'm like, let's just see how far I can get, right? Roll the droid up to the control tower, and the dice are flying, and just none of the rolls are getting anywhere. I'm not saying it was all critical fumbles, but it was all like low enough that nobody saw anything that suspicious in an astromech droid doing maintenance inside the governor's tower. So I get all the way up to the top, roll out into the governor's penthouse where he's like signing legislation, and he doesn't even look up. The Game Master's like, what is it? He's just writing things down. And I decided, well, now is the time to use all those thermal detonators. So I shouted, for the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
Blew up the droid, which of course destroyed the top floor of the tower, which, if you remember, there was a skip ray blast boat parked on top of it. So this massive explosion goes off at the building. The skip ray blast boat topples into it. It explodes. The whole tower is now this flaming wreck. The stormtroopers are like now awake, obviously, and like very confused. And the other people in my party are like, so I guess we should set off the distraction now? Sure. And they launch all the missiles that we did all over town to rein in, to add even more chaos to the entire scene. And as we were standing there on the ridge, that we'd never physically went into the town. Just we were watching from afar to see how far we could get with this crazy plan. We looked at each other, and one of the players goes, so I guess we're not getting that data card, are we? And that was one of my favorite moments.
Could be worth it. Could be worth it.
I mean, I will never forget that game. It was so funny. We died laughing. We were just rolling on the floor, holding our sides. It was one of those sessions. Did you ever have any like cool Star Wars moment?
Oh man, we had like a couple of bar standoffs. We had things similar to like who drew first. That kind of tension, because we were running a scoundrel kind of style for games. No catastrophic explosions. I think we left off I think doing like starship repairs of some kind. We had a fantastic droid in the group who had a list of directives that he'd made for his character. And of course, a full soundboard, a little droid ship noises. It was a lot of fun. There was a character that he had marked as the boss, and failing, if the boss was not in the room, he would obey the orders of whoever had the most money.
Okay, I like that protocol a lot, actually.
Yeah, he was a like retrofitted smuggling astromech who was the worst little bastard. It was great fun.
Nice.
It was a cool little crew. They were making like friends with some of the various mercenaries on planet and desperate enemies with others. It was a good little time. I'd wanted to take him out to space, but it went on long hiatus that is still going.
Let's see some of my other favorite characters. I had a Lobot, the guy with the cranial implant. And he was part of a party that included a big game hunter and a cyborg outlaw, and the three of us were hired to go kill a crate dragon by Jabba the Hutt. And then we were offered even more money to double cross Jabba, so we took that.
Ooh.
So we went out and we fought this crate dragon in the wilds of Tatooine, and the big game hunter's like, "Hey, Lobot guy, can you record this? We want to show the highlight reel to Jabba when we bring back the head." And the player was a friend of mine. We were both friends, but the characters were rivals. We didn't like each other. Our characters didn't. So I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll record the whole thing. Don't you worry. No big deal. So I record the whole thing. We get back to Jabba's palace, and Jabba's like, show me the video. I want to see this. And because I had the expertise in, modifying holographic information, the video that showed had no relation to the actual events. It just showed me being awesome and taking my little sporting blaster, like shooting it through the eye, while the big game hunter ran around with his hair on fire doing nothing, which didn't make him happy at all. But Jabba thought it was very entertaining. Later on, we were the guy who asked us to double cross Jabba asked us to kill Jabba and bring back proof that we had killed Jabba, wanted the head of Jabba the Hutt. Well, we decided to double cross the double crosser, and one of our people happened to have skills in cloning, because this was a big part of Star Wars at one point, the Clone Wars and all that. So we said, okay, what we'll do is we'll clone some of Jabba's skin cells and create a fake head that we can bring back to the other Hutt. Well, the wild eye did his thing again, and our clone person rolled really, really well with a complication. And the game master says, okay, so good news. You're able to clone Jabba's tissue. You do it perfectly. And we're like, great. What's the bad news? He says, the bad news is you created like 800 square meters of it. Of Jabba's own flesh tissue. And
oh,
we're like,
gross.
We decided, we were like, what are we going to do with all of this, Hutt flesh? What is the only possible result we could do with this? And our guy, the player who was the pilot of our ships, gets his eyes open wide. He gets this big grin on his face. He's like, oh, I've got the best idea. Cut to Mos Eisley Spaceport. A 10-story Jabba the Hutt flies overhead.
Oh my god.
The shadow of a giant Hutt just descending over this hive of scum and villainy. People screaming, running in all directions. Stormtroopers forming phalanxes and trying to shoot this awful thing out of the sky. Meanwhile, we're sitting inside our ship, which is, of course, inside the Jabba suit.
Oh my god.
Laughing our asses off.
It's like Thanksgiving Day. It's the most grotesque parade float in history.
It was highly memorable. Oh my god! This is the best comment I've seen so far. Fey Russ is just staring. He's like, what? Yes, mighty Jabba indeed. Godzilla Rex.
You're creating a new religion.
Star Wars was so fun. We had so many good times at Star Wars. And the dice pool was interesting too. I do vividly remember a moment in junior high when I was running a game and somebody was riding a speeder bike over a very dangerous jungle, and I wanted to have a monster like reach out and like try to grab the speeder bike. And I remember rolling 8 dice because it was a big monster. I rolled 8 dice and all 8 dice came up 6s. And I was like, oh my God, Yahtzee. Holy cow.
That's a big number.
I mean, that is into the impossible category in West End D6. But that's the kind of thing that can happen when you roll big handfuls of dice. Did your group ever try anything absolutely out of the ordinary?
Oh, nothing too crazy. A lot of people in my tabletop group are pretty methodical. We've got sort of a strategist bent to a lot of the play. So we've played groups like games like Eclipse Phase, where that's very much a little gonzo, but it also records rewards like careful planning and so on. That mentality gets extended to a lot of stuff that's like even a looser system. Definitely no Jabba the Hutt floats.
Well, let me throw a different question at you, a hypothetical.
Yeah.
As we pointed out, no one currently seems to have the license for Star Wars. What company do you think would do a very interesting job of a new Star Wars role-playing game?
Cubicle 7. And I could work on it and do Star Wars things. I'd want to say that there's a lot of room in Star Wars for like this sort of more narrative system. I like how the narrative die worked out. I'm not certain. Like,
May I pitch one?
sure.
Free League. I think Free League could do something really interesting with Star Wars. If you're not familiar with Free League or Free Login, they've done The One Ring, they've done
Alien, right?
Aliens,
Yeah.
Alien, the role-playing game, and a few others. And they have a very interesting and narrative approach to their games that I think would be a good fit for Star Wars.
I could see it. I could see it. What about? I wanted to say White Wolf is a gag, but I think they're like no. Are they like defunct now? They've become a Paradox Interactive, right?
Onyx Path, I believe, is who you'd want to. Yeah.
Well, Onyx Path is like a different group though. Like they took it from White Wolf, right?
Right, but they are the majority of White Wolf developers that made the games you're referencing are. I think,
they moved also. Okay.
At over at Onyx Path, the majority of them.
I had a brief talk with whoever runs the Onyx Path social media account when I was streaming Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh, really? Oh,
that was fun. That was fun.
Yeah, Onyx Path could do something interesting with it. Obviously, Storyteller system has narrative roots, and
it's kind of a return to form of the big die pool, right?
Using D10s, yeah. And having the experience of not only the World of Darkness stuff, but also Exalted and also Aberrance and Adventure and all that stuff, right? There's definitely the expertise there, I think, to build something interesting.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of system works well. Like I play a Poke-Roll, and that again is based in that kind of die pool structure, and I feel like that also lends itself well to interesting, flexible approaches to things. It feels right for like kind of loosey goosey power systems, which I think the Force is similar to. Basically, Star Wars is like Pokemon, as I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I see that exactly, but I'm okay. Tell me how they are like. Let's start there.
Why can't you just accept my inspired wisdom? If you insist, I will tell you. The way that they're similar is that similar to how the Force is kind of a flexible thing, although Pokemon moves are like really well designed and like specific. They have different conceptual ranges and like things they do. In practice in the RPG, you use them to do a lot of flexible effects and use like the nature of a given Pokemon to accomplish things, right? So your Bulbasaur, your Ivysaur can do stuff with their vines or with their petals and so on. I think that the Force would do well manifest with that kind of approach. Palpatine, I use you. Palpatine, use electric shock.
It was super effective. Professor Shapp, good call.
I think that it would work well enough. You'd have to like divide Force abilities into different fields again, going back to the OG3, I suppose. But there's room there, I think, to express what you can do in flexible ways, pulling off of your core stat for whatever your connection to the Force is, your concentration, blending that with a derived skill for particular applications. I think it'd work well enough. And it works in the same way that like your Pokemon uses their natural fire and so on. Like I see that and I think, okay, that works pretty well. Because like when I think of the way that Vampire the Masquerade skills work, it's not really the same, but that kind of gets close. So
I think another one I'd throw out there is R. Talsorian, who did, of course, Cyberpunk Red most recently.
Oh, yeah.
And The Witcher. I think they would have it. They have shown a talent for doing deep dives into big worlds and big IPs and bringing out a lot of the core aspects of that into a game. I would like to see what they could do with Star Wars. I think that'd be pretty wild.
A super crunchy Star Wars would be interesting, like really like deep dive, like cyberpunk levels of complexity. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
Well, I know you like the mechanical complexity more than anything else for some of the things we've talked about.
I really do. I really do.
I don't know on the rules light fronts. If you were going to try and get a company to design a rules light version of Star Wars, what would is there a template? Is there an existing game out there that you would say it's something like this?
Mechanically, I quite like this is a weird pull, but I like the Heart, the City Beneath, and Spire. I like those a lot. I'm not sure it would align super well. I think that those benefit from being kind of grotesque and funky. They benefit from really leaning into the meaty, disgusting nature of their setting. I feel like the actual structure of play is really good and pretty light. It's weird to envision that kind of structure being pulled out and used. It runs kind of like Blades in the Dark, if that makes sense, but not quite. It's very powered by the apocalypse kind of thing. So I like combat being treated the same as like other roles for a rules light system, though.
Blades in the Dark would be like a really interesting Edge of the Empire hack.
Yeah, for smuggling, yeah.
That would be for Edge of the Empire specifically. I think that'd be really great. I would like to take this opportunity to promote one of my friends, a guy named Mike Lafferty. He's got a Kickstarter right now for a rules light sci-fi RPG about chaos, mayhem, and quite possibly laser swords.
Nice.
I will put the link up there on the thing here. It's called Pew Pew, or this particular version is called Somehow Pew Pew Returned. Somehow. So I would encourage you to go all check that out if you get a chance. Mike does good work, and his Kickstarters are super fun. So please do me a favor and look at that. Well, we are near the end of our show here. Where can people find you doing things on the internet? Because you are an internet thing doer.
Golly, you can find me at Verisimilla on basically all platforms. I'm going to be tomorrow streaming KOTOR 2.
Nice.
Doing some Star Warsy things.
Topical.
Yeah, it might be a KOTOR 2 week. I've been excited for this for a while.
Who are your companions? I guess one of them. HK-47.
It's gotta be HK. I kind of like rolling with T3 and HK.
Really?
Yeah, Dread Gang.
Not Mission? Not Zalbar?
In KOTOR 1, I kind of like Mission. She grows on me. In 2, usually T3. I like Vices Mar.
Vices. Oh, she's the Miralukan. She's the Miralukan. I really like her. Yeah, she's
Vices is great. I am a sucker for Goto.
I really like what's her name? The Handmaiden.
Yeah, Handmaiden's great.
She's really cool.
That damn battle circle, though. Okay, and any knowers are aware that doing the battle circle on high difficulty fucking sucks. It's so hard. One of the most bizarrely difficult things I've done in any RPG. Like, what is going on? Honor mode has nothing on that, dude.
Okay.
Crit or die.
Wow. I'll have to check that out. Are you playing? What version of KOTOR are you playing? Is this the one from Steam or Good Old Games, or where is it?
I am gonna play on Steam and pray that it works. And I'm running the Restored Content mod and the Funny Planet mod for the number planet whose name I can't recall, but is all numbers. I'm hoping it's gonna work okay. These are notoriously difficult ports. KOTOR 1 would not run at all. Like
fingers crossed for you. Fingers crossed. All right, so. For me, you can find me at twitch.tv/TheRossWatson. I'm going to be streaming Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm going to try and start doing Final Liberation from the Warhammer Classics on that show.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, the cutscenes are the best. The best. And of course, you can find us here every week doing Lorebeards Roleplaying on Mondays. Next week, we're going to be talking about Nordic LARP, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, a variety of LARP I've always wanted to try, but have not gotten the chance. I've only done a vampire LARP before, which was fun, but did not have enough hitting people with stuff. Damn.
Oh my God. And of course, I also co-host Lorebeards 40K every Wednesday and every Saturday. You can find us there. Oh, we've got a super chat from Necro Player. Why don't you answer this one?
Yeah, thanks so much, Necro. Necro asks, which KOTOR 1 or 2 companion do y'all think is more fascinating as an RPG character for the Star Wars universe? Ooh, there are a lot of really good ones. Like, KOTOR has excellent characters, and I've got a couple of possible answers. What do you think, Ross?
Karth Onasi, because I love saying pure
Ooh.
Pazak. It's pure Pazak.
Pure Pazak. Pazak is a fantastic game, by the way.
Is it though? I honestly kind of thought it was a bit of a chore, but
I love Pazak. I love Swoop Racing. I have on my Discord soundboard the win and loss sounds from Pazak.
That does not shock me in the least. That is great. And a good question, Necro Player. What's your answer, Vera?
As an RPG character? I quite like Kreia. I'm not sure she's the right pick for this, though, because she's very NPC coded.
She's Ravel Puzzlewell.
She's intriguing.
If you haven't streamed yourself playing, if you've never played Planescape Torment, you should definitely stream yourself playing. There's a remaster of that. It's the extended edition, I think, is available for that, and it's so good.
I've never played Planescape. Yeah,
so it's very cool. But yeah, Kreia, who is of course spoilers, Darth Kreia. No, oh my God, what? She's great character.
I gotta go for HK-47. I think HK is the enduring coolest RPG character. And he's so fascinating. He's so gleefully malicious. He has all of these cute anecdotes about shooting people at extreme range. He is my precious baby. It's gotta be.
All right, so we're in our last 4 minutes of the show. What are your final thoughts on Star Wars, the role-playing game? All of the Star Wars role-playing games.
Star Wars as a franchise has its ties in cinematic, samurai-style storytelling. And when you're playing at the table, you want to make it feel like a really cool space opera of a movie. If you run it, make it fun, make it evocative, make it smooth, have sound effects. And let the Force guide you.
I dig it. I would say if you've never tried D6 Star Wars from the West End, you should give it a try because it's such a beautiful system. It's so elegant. As a game designer, I'm literally jealous of this. However, that being said, they all have their strengths and weaknesses. They all have their benefits. And the D20 version, I love it in KOTOR. I absolutely do love it in KOTOR. Don't ask me to play it at the table because I probably will not. I would prefer not to. The Edge of the Empire, I have a complicated relationship with. You know, I'd work on it. I'm proud of it. I think it's a good game, but the dice mechanics just give me rickets. I don't know. I want to learn how it feels when you run it, Vera, because I feel like there's a way for me to engage with that game that I haven't taken advantage of, and I would really like to fix that. I would like to be able to say later in life that I did change my opinion, and I really, it opened my eyes. So
I will do my best. The difficult part is going to be like, how do I play this music in a way that doesn't get us in trouble?
Right.
Because you need the OST. Come on, you need the OST. Be real.
We absolutely do. Actually, believe it or not, there's a Star Wars intro crawl creator you can find online, and I have been using this for my D6 game. Before we start playing, I have everybody assemble around my computer, and we do the opening crawl, and it's 3 paragraphs talking about what happened last session and what might happen this session, and my players absolutely love it. They go nuts. They're like, when that, in a galaxy far, far away comes up, and then and then you see all the stuff scrolling up the screen. They go nuts for it. So I think that's going to bring us to the end of this particular show. So what else would you like to say? Anything at all?
Well, all that said and all that done, in conclusion, may the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you. Watch out for the Revenge of the 6th.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Thanks,
somehow Star Wars returned.
Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you joining in. We'll see you around.
Bye now.